OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, 7:30 Tuesday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. We're here with you until 10 o'clock. It's the day of the first Champions League semi-finals. Real Madrid against Manchester City. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. If you've got thoughts on that or indeed anything else that you want to get off your chest, you can use the hashtag OTBAM. You can leave a comment on our YouTube stream. You can text us on 0879 180 180 or however it is that you want to get in touch with us this morning. We're going to start, though, with an exclusive on the front of the Telegraph. Major shock as Mickelson joins Rebels. This is Phil Mickelson, the golfer. You might remember him from such off-the-record Maria chats with Alan Shipnuck about those scary mother effers, the Saudi Arabians. You know that he revealed himself to be fully aware of the human rights issues that were going on and the murder of the Saudi journalist. And he was like, yeah, I was just using this as leverage with the PGA Tour to get more money because, we don't have enough money, the golfers. They don't get enough. And now it's decided he's actually going to go and play on that Saudi Tour anyway. The first event is in England. And PGA Tour members had until midnight last night to ask for a dispensation to play in the event. And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna show up. I'm a man of my word. I stick to my... What was his word again? I can't remember. What was his word? I don't know. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be shocked. But I am shocked in that Phil revealed who he was, and then he followed through on it, which doesn't happen anymore. You get called out in something, and you go, "Oh yeah, sorry about that. Sorry, really sorry. I'm not going to do it." But then you actually do it. It's like, wow, the ball's on this guy.
Yeah, we shouldn't be surprised if people want to get more money to do less work, which is essentially what the LIV tour is. We got to give it its correct name rather than the Saudi tour. And he also obviously wants to play the PGA Championship, of which he is the defending champion. So Phil Mickelson wants it all.
So sorry, that's the other thing. He's coming out of his self-imposed suspension / period of reflection. Was he shadow banned? Was it the shadow committee who banned people on Twitter who shadow banned you? Was that what happened to him? I don't know. It's impossible to know what's going on in golf, but this is madness. And they're also naming Sergio Garcia, Lee Westwood and Ian Poulter, who are going to play in the tournament in England. So it's kind of weird, right? The members of the PGA Tour had until last night to ask. Members of the European Tour have another couple of weeks to ask because the tournament itself is on in June, I think. And you're like, okay. Garcia, Westwood and Poulter were all thought to be shoe-ins for a Ryder Cup captaincy. Now it's like the European Tour gone, if you play in this tournament, you can't be a Ryder Cup captain. You can't play in the Ryder Cup. So Garcia won't be available for the next tournament if he plays. That's the thought at the moment. And they're like, I loved the Ryder Cup. It was very good and it was good for my brand, but the millions and millions and millions they're getting me is better for my bank account.
There's also a chance that if they get shunned as Ryder Cup captain in the near future, there's no guarantee that golf won't do a U-turn over the next little while as well and be like, okay, we forgive you if this Saudi Arabian backed tour is just a complete disaster. Maybe they wouldn't get the captaincy for the next one, but the one after that they'd be back in the fold, right?
Or the Saudi Arabian tour takes over the European tour.
Well, here's the thing: the European tour is in a very interesting place. Like, what's the main reason, optics-wise, why the European tour will go against this? Like, the real reason is obviously because their tour is screwed if anybody goes over to it, and they were already in a very vulnerable position. But they really can't be playing the moral trump card on any level here, given who now owns them, and to an even greater degree the fact that the Saudi Invitational ran from 2019 to 2021, and the European Tour were pretty happy for that to happen. So they've lost one of the cards that the PGA Tour can play. I'm not saying the PGA Tour have any right to play it, but at least they can say we didn't go to Saudi because you're mostly based on that side of the Atlantic. But the European Tour will have to deal with a fair degree of hypocrisy if they play the morality card.
Suddenly the tournament is like vaguely interesting from a pure golf perspective. Louis Oosthuizen, Sergio Garcia, Charles Schwartzel, Ian Poulter, Lee Westwood, Phil Mickelson. You're like, what's the difference between this and a random other tour event? It doesn't have any of those young Americans who are good, right, at the moment.
Doesn't have any Camerons.
No. No Camerons, no Jordans. No Jordan Camerons.
No.
Golf is screwed here. It doesn't really know what to do, and Phil Mickelson is the one who's bringing it down from inside. He is the Trojan horse.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead.
We were having this conversation a little bit earlier on where Will was saying about Greg Norman and whether or not he's going to play at the British Open. It's at St Andrews this year, isn't it? And it's like a big anniversary or something. Yeah, this is if you want the
150
chapter,
years.
If you want the chapter and verse in this, you can subscribe to Golf Weekly. That's what we've managed to corral them over there, so that none of the rest of us have to. Patreon.com/Golf Weekly. Great value. Right. Will was making the point they don't really want Greg Norman showing up and talking about the. So he'll have to qualify as a former champion. You get a dispensation for a certain number of tournaments up until the age of 60, and after that you've got to qualify. And so he says he's going to try and qualify, and he thinks he can do it. And maybe he can. But I do wonder if actually the right thing is to invite him, bring him over, and then have everybody in the room go, Jamal Khashoggi was murdered by Saudi authorities. You know that, and you're willing to work for that government as they sports wash. What do you say to that, Greg? And just to have the press conference and broadcast it live. And so, because the cat is out of the bag with Phil Mickelson, keep asking them. You're working for this regime. Those scary mother effers, as Phil Mickelson said. Why do you find them not scary? How much money did it take for you, Greg Norman, to decide that you didn't care about that you don't care about the murder of somebody doing their job? So you can say it's distant from you, but it's not distant from you. The very reason that sports washing exists is to allow countries to get away with this. You, Greg Norman, are at the forefront of this. Why are you allowing your name to be associated with this regime and their acts? Why are you endorsing this regime? How much money did it take for you to endorse it?
I'm not a politician, is what he would say.
Yeah, but you know what happens.
You're a golfer. I'm a mere businessman in the golfing world.
The golfers are now shills for the regime. There's no way of avoiding that. The golfers are shills for this regime, and so they're choosing that. And everybody who goes now to Saudi Arabia in the future, Phil Mickelson told everybody that you know what's going on. Your excuse about just being a golfer no longer washes. The world has changed.
Yeah.
The world is at war.
Mickelson has definitely screwed this whole thing up to a degree. Certainly that sort of.
And now he's taking the money still.
The idea that this is kind of like an outsider tour as well probably helps them in some regard, where they're like, you know what, we're being held back by the powers that be in the DP World Tour and in the PGA Tour, and we're going off to do our own thing because we're free spirits, and power to the golfers and money to the golfers, less work, more pay, all that sort of thing. Whereas if you invite them into the fold and they're available for, as you say, media reviews, interviews, and are just part of the current setup, I think that probably diminishes that argument as well. Like, if we're talking about the arguments that go for or against this, like just looking back at what the European Tour did say earlier this week, like the Keith Pelly plea isn't overly convincing. Like he's saying that conflicting events, regardless of how attractive they might appear to you personally, potentially compromise our efforts in these areas. It could significantly hurt your tour in both the short and long term. Then he goes on to say, please continue to bear this bigger picture in mind, particularly considering some of these conflicting events in 22 are scheduled directly some of our most prestigious heritage events, including the Horizon Irish Open, the DS Automobiles Italian Open, and the Acciona Open de España, 3 national opens which combined have more than 300 years of history. Like, are you reading that if you're Louis Oosthuizen or Charles Schwartzel or any of the European Tour players and saying those heritage events is exactly why I play golf? So the compelling reason to keep you within the European Tour isn't overly compelling, but it should just be enough of a reason to not go join the LIV Golf Invitational.
And so, very interesting, yesterday, Brian Keogh's piece in, I think it's the Irish Independent today, was talking about the announcement that 3 of the next 5 Irish Opens are going to be at the K Club, and that no announcement has been made yet about whether or not it's going to be co-sanctioned by the PGA Tour, which of course then, if the Irish Open was to go against one of these LIV things, that would, if you played in the other one, you wouldn't be able to. The PGA Tour will ratchet up the pressure, because the first American event on the LIV Tour, maybe we should have said that, this isn't a Saudi Arabian tour in Saudi Arabia, this is a Saudi Arabian tour in England and America. That's what's going to happen here. The events are going to be in England and America, and maybe in the long run the European Tour has 6 events that are co-sanctioned by the PGA Tour, and the rest of it is a feeder tour for the PGA Tour, and those 6 or 8 events are around the British Open, and that's where this goes. The proper global tour is a global tour, and actually that's probably where this needs to go anyway. So I don't know, irrespective of what happens to the golf tours, because I don't really care about that. That's like, where will the golfers earn their millions? Will it be in the sunbaked climes of southern Europe in the summertime, or in the sunbaked climes of Florida and California? Yes, it will, is the answer. Yes, they will make their millions all over the world, like they always do. But what Phil Mickelson is doing, and what everybody else and what Greg Norman is doing, is they're shilling for the Saudi Arabian regime, and they're making loads of money doing it, and they have to answer those questions. And bring Greg Norman. Invite him to the press conference, I say.
Yeah, they may not have to is the thing, and that would probably be of greater disappointment. Although I do think that Greg Norman has a fairly good capacity to bury himself when he's talking about this sort of things. He doesn't seem to have anything other than a bit of a brass neck. So I would definitely watch that. I would definitely watch a head-to-head between Greg Norman and whichever member of the press pack is likely to ask those questions.
They all have to now. That's the other thing, is that there seems to have been a kerfuffle around a press conference at Newcastle last week when there was a debate about whether or not some journalists were looking down on other journalists for talking about football. Like, that's definitely what's going to happen in the golf. If it's going to take a little bit longer, it's definitely taking a while.
But this is easier for a journalist to ask a question, because you've got the people who actually run the PGA Tour and the European Tour saying this is a disgrace, and all of a sudden you're in the press rooms that are operated by these people. If anything, you'd be encouraged to do so.
All right. It's true. Yeah, exactly. And look, loads of them have been asking questions all the way through, so fair play to those ones. 7:42 this morning here on OTB AM. I said yesterday in the show, in passing, that the Champions League semi-finals are some of the best sport in the world at the moment. They really are. It's like a divisional weekend, or maybe the NFL Championship weekend, where you genuinely get the best teams. Although the trouble with the American football is that the injury profile is so bad by the end of the season that you don't actually get the best players playing. But at the moment, tonight's football should be the best of the two legs. I mean, I say that. It might not be. Villarreal might be perfectly set up to do something weird to Liverpool that forces Liverpool to a new level of greatness. But, like, Man City, Pep versus Real Madrid again. It's like, oh, well. So we meet again. Look what the cat dragged in.
This is definitely the more interesting of it. Like, I mean, it is interesting that football all of a sudden have a world where all their players are fit all the time and going these like massive long seasons, fighting on multiple different fronts, and everybody's fit all the time.
And they're running further and faster than they've ever done before. It's a miracle.
They look stronger,
and it's also like lest we be accused of hypocrisy. The sports washing going on in football is even like is just as disgusting as the sports washing going on in golf and in boxing and in athletics. And in all sports. Your local GAA club might be the only thing that your local soccer club.
And the reason why these couple of games are going to be so good is because of the money that comes with that sports washing and how grotesque the whole thing is. I think that I got a DM off somebody after the last. What was the last really great game? I suppose Real Madrid Chelsea, or maybe Real Madrid PSG, and it was like grotesque capitalism at its best again. And I was like, yes. Yeah. We make a decision every time we watch this stage of the Champions League. I think once you get to the knockout stages of the Champions League, you make a decision to just park it in the back of your head. And I mean, it probably isn't something that we should do, but it is something that we
that's how it works. It's like, but I think like the games are going to happen, so we need to watch them, and it would be churlish not to enjoy them, right?
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. And
did you not enjoy Tyson Fury's uppercut? When you searched the gif of it afterwards, did you not go, wow, that's some punch?
Yeah, but there was also a push on the back of it, you know. Like Dillian White has come out afterwards and said he cheated. You're not allowed to push a guy in the boxing ring. I was just going to rest my head on your shoulder for a minute there, come to my senses, and then everything would have been fine again. So no, I did not enjoy the uppercut because he pushed me, cheated.
Okay.
He
quite enjoyed the
screwed
uppercut.
Over. No, it was like I don't think you can watch Tyson Fury and not enjoy everything that he does. Really, that's the whole problem here.
Without the little asterisk and the caveat, the dark cloud following you, going, I'm just part of the problem.
Well, it depends on whether or not you pay for the pay-per-view, if you're part of the problem, or speaking about it and adding oxygen to it maybe could be part of the problem as well.
But when he fights Anthony Joshua or Anthony or Usyk, definitely going to watch that.
Well, like I think so, and I think that if you're just interested in like an artist at the moment in boxing, it is Fury, and I think that's been the case for the last few years, even before he was so flagrantly public about his relationship with Daniel Kinahan. I think that's people would have been on that bandwagon anyway. So I think the word you're looking for is isn't it a shame that this happened to the thing that I already enjoyed, and I'm going to continue to enjoy this thing, even though I realise it is a shame.
Life is complicated, but the football tonight will be absolutely amazing.
Like tonight is definitely the one. Like I think that obviously there's a huge expectation that Liverpool are going to be in the final on the other side of the draw. Villarreal have obviously created a couple of big upsets earlier in the competition. I don't think that they played a team of Liverpool's quality. So you're looking at that fixture and it doesn't necessarily have the semi-final glamour.
No, but Liverpool sometimes they're a bit off in some of these games.
You want it to be a team worse than Liverpool going up against Villarreal. Like Ajax Tottenham in 2019 was fantastic because Tottenham weren't at a great level themselves, I would suggest.
No, they weren't. They had a crap season.
So that means that they were in a situation going into the second half or the second game and the late stage of the second game where they needed a massive comeback. Like obviously Liverpool, if that's how they end up beating Villarreal, that'll be fantastic. But you'd just worry a little bit that Liverpool are going to be a bit too strong for them.
All right.
First world problems.
Exactly. 0879 180 180, that's the WhatsApp number. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what's going up between now and 10 o'clock this morning. Power rankings. Very troubled power rankings. Sam Lee is going to join us at 8:10 for our check-in in Manchester City. Newspapers. Ronan Mullen is going to talk boxing. Big weekend. Massive, historic weekend for Katie Taylor. We're bringing a news update. Aidan Fogarty is going to join us at 9:10 to preview the weekend's hurling as well and look back on last weekend. Again, the hurling, like the massive games are coming thick and fast. Galway Kilkenny this weekend, and also the Clare hurlers, Clare and Cork. Who knows what's going to happen? Clare might be dragging Cork into that deep water and drowning them this weekend, or Cork could be reborn. We'll see. But at 7:47, it is time for pensive, self-reflective, apologetic power rankings.
Some of these critics, these pundits,
I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
They'd like to play the hard man when they're on it. It's not very pleasant when you're trying to manage a team. All you're looking for is a bit of civility and a bit of decency, but they just dismiss you like you have nothing to do with the bloody occasion.
Right. I said an apologetic version of the power rankings here on.
A vindicated version of the power rankings are always in vindicated form because everything is ultimately proven to be correct.
Albert Reynolds came out and won like a euro or a penny or something in a libel action against the Sunday Times. And he was like, vindicated. Everybody was like, really? Because normally everybody gets like millions when they're vindicated in this situation.
Did or did he not earn a profit as a result of that libel action?
I mean, I'd say the legal fees might have resulted in...
All I'm seeing is a plus in the column, and that plus, it doesn't matter what the magnitude is, and that's the way the power rankings are every single week in full-on Albert Reynolds post-court case mode. At 32, still, is Waterford.
Vindicated.
At 31 is Carlow. So we've gone through two teams here that have proven my point of vindication. Forget about all the red and the green that you're going to see here and all the movement that we are now about to go through. But London are down into 30th. Laois, the big fallers this week, one of the big fallers this week, down to 29th. It's been a terrible season for them so far. Billy Sheahan looked absolutely despondent after their defeat at the weekend. They obviously got relegated to Division 4 and they go into the Townsend Cup. 28 is Sligo. They had a win against New York, but as we'll get to in a moment, there's been a couple of risers from the first page. So Leitrim stayed put at 27th. They had a win against London since we last did our last update in the power rankings. Longford are yet to play there in 26th. Antrim were beaten by 13 points against Cavan last weekend. A really impressive performance from Cavan. They're down to 25th. And then Offaly are the biggest fallers this week. They're down to 24th, plummeting after getting beaten by Wexford. Not too many people would have seen that coming, despite the fact that Offaly did have injuries, of course, and were down a couple of players. I think it was more to do with the fact that Wexford weren't actually great in the National League this year, somehow pulling out that result. They were at home, and they're up there to 23rd place, up 7 places to 23rd.
Wow. They're the biggest risers.
They would be, yes. I think so. I think they are. They are, yeah. I'm not sure too many people would have called this. Like, they said that they had great confidence themselves, and as I say, like, you didn't necessarily point them out during the league and say there's a team who's going to cause an upset. Like, that may be because they were in a division with Cavan and Tipperary, and that kind of battened down any opportunity for there to be a bit of a bolter from the traditional Division 4 teams. But I think that they've just timed their run absolutely perfectly. Even in comparison to this time last year, like, you look at someone like Ben Brosnan. I know he's got a lot of attention because he's been around for so long, but he scored 1-8. He wasn't there for the Dublin game last year, and he was saying in the aftermath that he was just hoping all year for the last 12 months, let's just get Dublin again, let's get Dublin again, let's get Dublin again. And his 1-8 at the weekend means that they're getting Dublin again, and he's getting the opportunity to play them again. And they've been pretty straight up about it. They've literally said in the aftermath, it could have been Brosnan or maybe it was their manager who said, yeah, Dublin aren't as good as they were last year. So now it wasn't a close run thing. What was it? Was it 6 to 8 points or something like that? I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it felt close. It felt like the beginning of Dublin decline last year, and that'll be an interesting subtext going into this game this weekend. And Wexford, as I say, are at home.
15 points to 7 points.
So 8 points, okay. So it was over double scores, to be fair. So not exactly a close run thing, as I say, but like Wexford will look at that game with a bit more appetite than they would have done
6-3
4
at
years
half
ago.
time.
Wicklow are the other risers, obviously, this week after their win against Laois. This is something that was less surprising because of the opposition that Wicklow were up against. I know Offaly did get relegated, as did Laois, but Offaly were obviously coming from a much higher base. Kevin Quinn got his hat-trick against Laois in that game. This was their first win against Laois since 1986. Meath might be a little bit worried at the weekend. I think it's not to the same magnitude as Dublin, but I think Meath will be just fine this weekend. They're at home as well. This game is taking place in Navan, but you just don't know when you've got these two teams coming in off the back of some huge wins. So Wexford, Wicklow, the big risers. There's been a bit of chaos above that, so teams that are getting beaten are rising, teams that are winning are dropping, and all that sort of stuff, because there's been a few bolters, as you can imagine. Fermanagh are in at 21st. They're out of the championship. They lost to Tyrone. Down are in at 20th. They're yet to play in the championship. Westmeath also yet to play in at 19th. Tip and Limerick also yet to play. They're in at 18th and 17th respectively. And then Cork in at 16th. They've been leapfrogged. They've of course yet to play. They're playing at Parkley Rin against Kerry on the 7th of May. And Louth have gone above them.
Right.
This has been a hell of a spring for them. Like, Mickey Hart taking over was always a bit of a headline grabbing thing, and you weren't quite sure what he was going to do with them in season 1, but season 2 it seems that they've gone to a whole other level. He's obviously got the players to work with. He's got a great set of forwards, and of course Samuel Roy is the guy who's taken most of the attention. 2-5 at the weekend, 556 in league and championship so far this year. He was asked after the game if he was happy with his tally. His answer, no. He wanted more. This guy's hungry for points and goals. He thought he had a few more opportunities. He set up, I think, 1-1 as well on top of that.
I'm telling you, I don't know. I don't know how it didn't move the needle yesterday, but I'm the Louth +5 at a touch over evens.
Well, that I think the handicap is definitely something worth looking at. I do think Kildare will win at the weekend, but it's a game. Is it on TV? Full game? I presume, because it's Sunday.
4 o'clock on Sunday.
So I presume not. But that's something you would pay to watch for sure. At least even after the hurling, to watch the full thing back, because I think that 5 points is an interesting one to look at. Like when I mentioned the forwards that they have as well, like it's worth paying the admission fee to see Conor Grimes and Kieran Byrne, who've been constant figures throughout this season as well for Louth in that forward line. And that's probably what's helping Mulroy here a bit as well, is that he does have players around him that are excellent. So this is not this sort of, Roy the Rovers one-man team. He's been brilliant. He's been arguably I think he has been the top scoring forward so far this year. So that just kind of marks where they're at. Like, it was a 15-point win against Carlow.
Yeah,
like, that's the level of the hammering we've seen dished out here. So that's not becoming of a team who are kind of like a Division 3 team. This says to me that Louth are a team who got promoted to Division 2 and are planning on staying there.
It's in Tullamore. I don't like it.
Kildare hate Tullamore.
I don't like it. I don't like the build up to this. I don't like the ghosts. No thanks.
What about Paul Mescal's shorts though?
Well, Paul Mescal's shorts might be enough to swing it in our favour.
Is that not a good omen?
Telling you, they should be the best selling GAA item in the history of anything. Now the fact that, there's like room to cash in here. He did a little message for a walk recently, and it didn't get any pop. And here he is at Coachella in the shorts, his signature look.
Coachella looks crap, but I guess Paul Mescal was
it wasn't even the Versace version. It was actually the O'Neill's version, wasn't it?
It was genuine Kildare GAA shorts. But the thing is, is he sending out a message to Kildare to wish them luck?
Come and get me,
because he doesn't always wear Kildare shorts.
Sometimes he wears the Versace ones, does he?
Gucci, wasn't it, who did it?
Was it?
Well, but I don't think so. No, I think it's always genuine.
Yeah,
he did play minor. Like, he's got a lot of free GAA shorts.
Well, 3 or 4 anyway left.
Well, definitely. But there was different ones. But there like whenever he's out in public wearing GAA shorts, the photo necessarily goes viral. So I haven't seen these Kildare ones too often. So I'm chalking that down as the main reason why Kildare are going to win this weekend. Clare in at 14th. They haven't played. Cavan have leapfrogged them because they were so good at the weekend. A few people actually picked against them, or maybe were nervous for Cavan's prospects, but it seems that Division 4 hasn't done them a whole pile of harm. They do have Donegal in the next round. It'll be a hell of a story if they manage to beat Donegal and therefore qualify themselves for the All-Ireland Championship for Sam Maguire and not fall into the Tailteann Cup. Paddy Lynch kicked 8 points for them on his championship debut at the weekend, and it feels like stories like that just go under the radar because of the division in which they're playing, National League football. So you're kind of happening upon these stories in the championship on the bigger stage. He also set up Grove McKiernan's goal and a 13-point win against Antrim at the weekend.
Again, same for that. Cavan +5.
Yeah. Do you know where that game is on? Do you have it handy?
Donegal written down first where it is.
That game was in the Athletic Grounds in 2020, I think, wasn't it? That Ulster final. So maybe the final is the one that it goes neutral and then it's home away agreements outside of that. I don't know, but if Cavan are at home, you definitely look at that. Meath stay put at number 12. Derry stay put at number 11. Both of those teams yet to play, and then Kildare, as we've mentioned, get their championship underway this weekend. They start our top 10. They're down a place because we obviously have a riser coming up. Roscommon down to number 9. They're yet to play, obviously, in this year's championship. Armagh down to 8th. I think that maybe they'd been dropping in these power rankings at the end of the league. That's why they're the most correct, vindicated power rankings. The trend, the Armagh trend, has just continued, and they're down one place.
You're grandfathering in your correctness here, which is completely incorrect. Were Armagh second at one point in these after the first?
They beat the Dubs in Croke Park.
Yeah, so they were second and they've fallen to 8th.
Were they second? I'm not sure if they were second. They were definitely top 3 or 4.
Is this the highest goal we've ever been this season?
This season. Operating in Division 2, they've been lingering in around the top dozen and they're up to 7th. This is obviously going to be the thing that annoys people the most, I would suggest. I'm not going to try and deny that. Galway not being above Mayo. Monaghan in at number 6th, and Mayo have dropped. They've dropped a couple of places down to number 5. So Mayo have dropped, Galway have risen, but I'm just putting the situation of Galway leapfrogging Mayo in these rankings on ice for the moment.
Why?
If Galway do win the Connacht Championship, and if
Galway go to Mayo, Fortress Mayo, Mayo unveiling the new pitch for the first time.
Yeah,
wasn't great for them. Before a supposedly feverish home crowd, and absolutely spanked them for 68 minutes.
Yeah,
right, and they nearly collapsed over the line. They were like a long distance runner who goes into muscle spasm at the line, but who's like streets and streets ahead. Just a little bit of muscle spasm at the end, and then they fall over the line. And they're still not ahead of them in the power rankings.
I think that there's a chance that this is the start of real progress for Galway. The awakening of a sleeping giant, I think, is how Kevin McStay puts it in the Irish Times this morning. But I just think that that's a chance. I'm not 100% sure yet that they are the dominant team in Connacht, and in an All-Ireland sense. Like, you look at 2016, Galway went to Castlebar and they won. 2018, Galway go to Castlebar and they win. This is the third consecutive time they've gone to Castlebar and they've won. Now, except in 2018, they got further than Mayo in the All-Ireland Championship. But you compare their performance in the All-Ireland semi-final that year to, say, Mayo in the final the previous year against Dublin and Mayo in the final the previous year against Dublin. That I don't think you can make an argument that Galway around that era were a better team than Mayo. So those wins in Castlebar were essentially irrelevant.
This team seems different.
Well, see, that's the thing. I'm not exactly 100% sure if that's the case. I will 100%. There's every chance I'll be changing my tune on that in a while, but I just want to see more. I just want to see this Galway team win this championship, beat Roscommon after losing to them twice.
Do you not think that there's something weird about Galway in that they seem to have the most natural footballers outside of Kerry? That actually their ability to produce half-backs and half-forwards who can solo the ball at the same pace they run at and who are excellent kickers is unparalleled apart from Kerry. That they're a team who needs to create athletes as opposed to a team who needs to create footballers. Everybody else, or the whole rest of the country, is like, we've got athletes, let's turn them into footballers. With Galway, it's like, we have these amazing footballers, two-footed. Half the team seems two-footed. And they have vision and they have everything else, but they were flaky as bejesus over the last decade.
Yeah.
You could not trust them. This year, all of their main players seem to be fit. Now, we don't know what's going to happen over the next few weeks. That might, and the squad depth could be paper thin. But for the first time in a long time, everybody seems to be fit. And their manager stopped banging on about, this is traditional Galway style, and he battened down the hatches maybe that's to do with Keenan, maybe it's to do with Divilly having a more of a say, but it seems like they finally cottoned on to the fact that like you need a defensive structure, and that's actually really more important for a team who has the natural footballers that they have. And so it was only their flakiness that I thought that was going to prevent them from getting here, but they seemed not to be flaky at the weekend. They were pretty flaky for the last 5 minutes, but it didn't cost them.
It almost did, and I think that there's a small bit of scoreboard journalism going on there. But
that's all right, the scoreboard counts.
It does, but what I was just about to say, in fairness, is that you could also use that in favour of Mayo as well. You know, the Mayo argument of, they only lost by a point, when in actual fact they were down by so much at the end. So I think maybe if you discard that for a sec, if we just dig down a little bit deeper into like some of the stats, like Mayo had 32 shots to Galway's 24. The efficiency rate was completely different though. Galway 62%, Mayo 50%. From play then it was Mayo 22 shots, Galway 20 shots. So that efficiency rate from free taking is one of the real problems here. Galway went to 100% and Mayo were 70%. So I'm not sure is that something that Mayo fix over the next little while. I think from play it's something they have to fix. It did cost them against Tyrone in last year's All-Ireland final. It felt. So maybe this is a theme that Horan has really tried to address and has been unable to do so. The other thing is that Mayo did win more turnovers than Galway. Like you can't really look at the kickouts as a sign of anything to read into figures wise, because Mayo or Galway dropped off the Mayo kickout, but Mayo did do well on the Galway kickout, and there were a number of different factors here that would suggest to me that if they have Henley back, if they have Durcan back, if they've got a fully fit Oisin Mullen, a fully fit Cillian O'Connor, a fully fit Diarmuid O'Connor,
they might not.
Then I would say. But I think there's just Jordan Flynn. There's just so many players there.
But so much doubt about all of them. Like there's no guarantee that any of those are going to come back. It's like Con.
Not all of them, but like I would say that you could be fairly certain that there is going to be a collection of those players who will be fully fit come the end of the season.
Who will be fully fit and peaking. Well, because they might. I mean, who knows who they're going to play in their next game? But it could be a really good team. It could be a mediocre enough team. And that's why this is like a sort of a higher wire suggestion to say that Mayo are still better than Galway, because they could get dumped out next week and this would look like a very foolish thing to say. But I just do think that I'm still thinking that who are you backing to go all the way in the All-Ireland if they're in the same place and you're backing Mayo? Granted, they've been given a setback right now, and that makes Galway more likely. Obviously, they only have they've still got the safety net of going through the qualifiers if they need to. But okay, so we're at an All-Ireland semi-final draw stage, right? And in one pot it's Kerry, and in the other pot I have two hot balls, and it's Galway and Mayo. Which of these hot balls do you want me to pick out?
Well, you could say that the last time Kerry played Galway in Croke Park, Galway beat them, but I still think Mayo are more of a threat in Croke Park. They got to the last two All-Ireland finals. Let's
say today, with the available players they have and the level of fitness that we have. Which is what you're making the power rankings today.
Yeah, no.
You can change the power rankings the week before that Mayo play their first round of the qualifiers, when we know Flynn is back and Henley's back. Yeah. And
I would still say Mayo are a slight more threat. If it's like season on the line, you're going home. It's in Croke Park. It's full. I think also the other thing about this, and Galway deserve huge credit for this, is the way that they set up was Mayo specific. It felt on Sunday. Maybe not. Maybe this is the system that they deploy over the next little while. But it did feel like the double sweepers was like the kryptonite for Mayo, and it was the way to expose how Mayo's one-dimensional attack is going to be something that probably means they're not going to win the All-Ireland. But that doesn't mean they can't go very, very close to winning it again this year. And I'd just be interested to see how Galway cope with, I guess, being favourites in this Connacht final, which they probably will be if it's going to be themselves against Roscommon, and how they cope with that pressure over the next little while. And those flair players that you mentioned, the skillful players, how to unlock them even more. All
right, they're your power rankings.
That's just my current feeling on that. Donegal are up to 4th after their win against Armagh at the weekend.
You trust Donegal again?
I trust them over the next little while, for sure.
And Dublin are in green. Why are Dublin in green?
Because Mayo have dropped out of the top 3. Mayo were 3rd before these, and by default, Dublin have slipped into the top 3. Con is back. He's going to play this weekend, according to the back of the Herald. They're fresh from their training camp in Portugal, and the National League is over. It's done. That league version of Dublin, just like that league version of Limerick, is done. It's dusted, and I think there's a slight sense of optimism around what Dublin are going to do. I still think it'll be a massive shock if they didn't win Leinster this year, and again, we can't really make any predictions with regards to what's going to happen in the quarter-final draw. Tyrone stay put at number 2. They beat Fermanagh by 7 points in their opening game.
Were they good enough to stay at number 2? You're also kind of blahing away that because it was inferior opposition that they got sucked into a weird game.
Yeah, like, I don't think that there was enough about it to drop them off that place. I think that they finished the league quite strongly. I think that they finished that game against Fermanagh quite strongly. Like, I think that 7 points made Fermanagh look quite good in the end, even though they played very well for a lot of that first half. I still think Tyrone have done enough to stay number 2, and Kerry haven't played yet in the championship. They're still in at number 1.
Is there a possibility that some of the Dubs are about to peak? Do you know what age Cormac Costello is off the top of your head?
28?
He's actually only 27, yeah. He's 28 in July, around the time of the All-Ireland this year. Traditionally, you would have said that players come into their peak, they have the experience and all the know-how and all that kind of stuff around between the ages of 28 and 32. He's had a pretty good career so far.
Yeah, not bad. Like, Fenton's the same age, Kilkenny's the same age. They're all 93, aren't they? So, like,
they're all your age, right? Of course.
Yeah, it's a slight bit older.
That's how you know.
Yeah, a slight bit older. And like, I mean,
he's 94.
Costello is.
Yeah.
Oh shit, I'm going to be 28 this year. The Conroy situation as well at the weekend. It's like, look at this person who's actually operating at their peak at the age of 32. Like, I mean, does a time away from the game injury enforce the course elongate his career a little bit? I don't know. Like, you would have thought it would do the opposite, but maybe it just kind of the freshness that brings after getting back to the game after a little while out is something that helps him. It's hard to pin down what exactly is the peak for a GAA player at the moment, considering a lot of those Dubs were so good in their early 20s.
Yeah, and they were coming into a very good situation, and now they have to step up and be the absolute leaders of a team. And if they were to do that, that would be, if they were to build a second dynasty, I mean, it would be an amazing rivalry that they're about to have with Kerry if they can hit a second peak and be galvanised. So that's, I think, one of the most interesting subplots. Are Tyrone going to be the same as they were? Is that the corpse of Mayo that we saw at the weekend, or are they about to rise Lazarus-like?
How did Mayo end up in the league final? How did that happen?
They beat Kildare, just about, and that was enough to get them the points to get through.
Like, they beat Dublin. Like, if you look through, they beat Armagh, who were going well at the time. They lost to Kerry by just 1 point in Tralee. Like, I know that they love that location. Like you mentioned there, the win against Kildare, which was significant enough to beat Monaghan in Clonus, remember? Like, Mayo did have big wins. Like, these last 2 games are not becoming of Mayo in 2022 even. I accept that the stakes have got higher and higher over the last while.
Was there some weird complacency about the home venue? Was there something weird going on? Because the atmosphere was dead, I thought. Look, I wasn't at it. I was watching on TV. But it seemed like they were kind of less into the game than they should have been, for the fact that Galway were rolling into town with a big axe to grind. It didn't make any sense.
Is it just the qualifiers and the back door? Does that just change the Mayo psyche a little bit?
The urgency.
Like, I mean, it certainly seemed that there was a bit of an urgency about them when it felt like they were under massive pressure against Galway last year. Now, in fairness, that Galway game last year, like, Shane Walsh does go off injured. That's a pretty, like, it's hugely significant.
The instant Finnerty went off injured, and did Galway prevent themselves from scoring a goal in that? Was it a double whammy? There was some weird thing that happened. He banged the post or something.
Yeah, that rings a bell. And then the previous year, I'm not sure what the mitigating factor was.
And in fairness, Mayo should have had a man sent off for the Shane Walsh thing.
Yeah.
Like, or at least black carded.
So, like those are definitely factors as well. But I do think that's, like, when Mayo see the fact that there's a qualifier route, they're like, yeah, give me that. Give me a couple of games in the back door, because they just love that. Compco
Productions. Hello, Compco. Good morning to you. New York. Why London but no New York?
Good point.
You can start sticking them in.
Yeah.
Team 33.
Yeah, well, exactly. The Tailteann Cup might. I'm actually not sure how that's going to factor into our power rankings. Might see a resurgence of a few of those teams.
You can do what the SPL does and separate it into 2 competitions.
Yeah.
What a great competition that is. We all pay attention to the bottom 6 of that. Will O'Callaghan says, Offaly, that's our Will, says Offaly deserve to drop more places for having our best player of the last 25 years as sub-goalkeeper last Sunday. Niall McNamee was sub-keeper amidst the injury crisis. Or they deserve to have fewer, as a bit of a smaller drop, but that is a shocking result for them, even notwithstanding the injuries that they have. Connor says Mayo will still go further in the championship than Galway, and Roscommon will beat Galway in the Connacht final. Galway a good team, but not as good as Ger is saying. I'm not saying that yet that they're a great team, but they've produced this unbelievable group of footballers, and frequently the crops come like mushrooms overnight. I just think the skill level, they're like Welsh rugby. I don't know how, but there's just you don't agree with this?
I know exactly how. Like, I mean, Galway's a massive county. Galway's got a city. That's like, Wales is like.
I mean, is it a real city? Like,
It's-
Kilkenny City, Waterford City,
Wa-
Galway City.
Wales feels
Tal is
more
bigger.
random. Like, I mean,
Tal is bigger.
Okay, fair enough. Like, that's why Dublin are in third. But like, I mean, with Wales, like, how are you competing with England and France all the time with the massive countries that they have?
It's the skill set. It's this weird little. I don't understand. But there's something there that they need to be more successful with. Galway win All Ireland, Mayo don't. End of story, says Dave. Who's going to win All Ireland first, Galway or Mayo?
Well, that is an entirely different question.
Who's going to win All Ireland first?
I think Mayo.
No evidence. Where's the evidence for that? Where's the evidence for that? That's just my opinion. Where's the evidence for that?
It is just my opinion, I think.
10 minutes past 8. That's this week's Power Rankings.
I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
No, it's not. It's not acceptable, and yet we still persist with doing it. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs. For an effortless finish to your day, we're going to talk about the biggest game in world football tonight. It is the money of Real Madrid versus the money of Manchester City, with Sam Lee next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Off the ball's the best, number one.
It's the GOAT of sports apps.
Talk about the greatest of all time. Nathan, you know Big Joe. Big Joe's the greatest of all time. He's the GOAT. We know it.
So
Every single time. Yes.
It's tough going. It's tough for my ego. I'm going to say I'm the Djokovic of this scenario.
I love it.
This is OTB Sports Radio. Download the OTB Sports app now.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance PLC.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, it's 11 minutes past 8. You're very welcome back to OTB AM. Time for us to turn our attention to the Champions League semi-finals. I've been saying this now for a couple of days, but this is some of the best sport you're ever going to watch. So make sure you're in front of your TV tonight for Real Madrid against Manchester City. Not just for the subplots, but for the quality of football. Sam Lee of The Athletic is with us. Sam, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Many ghosts of Champions League semi-finals for Pep Guardiola. How has his general mood been this week? Is he King Lear raving on the heat, or is he actually nice and calm and methodical and his normal self? What is it?
Yeah, no, nice and calm. I mean, he has been, particularly since the international break, when you come back from that and it's Liverpool twice and Atletico Madrid twice, and you think it would be easy to be nervous and tetchy and whatever. He was on great form before those games. Yesterday, in terms of the press conference, he's obviously got that history with the Spanish press. And after the way the Atletico Madrid press conferences went, when they kind of, I would say, misinterpreted his comments on Atletico Madrid's style, he didn't want to get into any of that at all. So by the time the Spanish questions were asked at the end, he's like, I have no idea about that, or I'm not talking about that, and that was it, move on. So he was a bit tetchy in that sense, but I think overall, in fact, I heard from somebody yesterday who just said he's in a great place at the minute. He's loving life, would you believe?
We never quite know with Pep what's going to happen, considering he walked away from Barcelona when it looked like there were a number more years that he could have stayed there to hoover up Champions League titles with the best player in the world and some of the the best style of play. So we never quite know how long or if a clock is ticking about his tenure at Manchester City, but it appears as if perhaps he's here for a longer stay than maybe we anticipated when he arrived.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess he's here already longer than we thought. That was 6 years ago, and he's surely going to do at least another season. If he signed another contract, I wouldn't be too surprised. What you say there about Barca, I suppose it goes to show that it's not so much about, not always about the players at your disposal, but just kind of, job satisfaction, but just how nice the day-to-day job is. And at Barca, he was fighting loads of battles, not necessarily with Mourinho and Madrid, but like with his own kind of board, within Barca, there was so much politics that he kind of stood up and fronted, and in the end that wore him down. Whereas at City, and I kind of wrote this in my article before this game. And at Bayern Munich as well. At Bayern Munich, he had people above his head. He had Franz Beckenbauer, who was an honorary president. But he had Rummenigge, who was the president. He had Sammer, who was the sporting director, just constantly talking to the media, whether it was good, bad, constructive, whatever. And you just think, it's City. He's got none of that. He's got none of the battles with the Spanish press because they all went home years ago because they got bored of him winning and thought there's no story here. He's got nobody at City going above his head and talking to the press and putting pressure on him. Everything's geared towards making his life easy, and as easy as it possibly can be to manage this football team. And I think that's probably the biggest thing. I mean, there might have to be a bit of a shake-up in terms of the squad because it's been largely the same group of players for so long. But, yeah, he's in a great place, and it's for reasons like that, really.
So when Pep Guardiola starts as Manchester City manager, the press room at the Etihad is full of Spanish hacks, and nowadays it just isn't. And
yeah, there was a lot. And not all and not all of them were the kind of stereotypical Spanish journalists, El Chiringuito out for controversy. Not all of them at all. But I think even like some of the editors back in Spain were just like, okay, well, there's no story here anymore. They're just winning. But there was definitely a sense of glee in the first season or so when they weren't doing so well, and after a couple of years that obviously dried up, sadly, because they're a great group of lads, but there was enough to play a full game of 5-a-side each. We used to go down and play during the days with like 9 or 10 Spanish lads, but now there's just like 1 or 2. So that kind of tells you the climate of what they want from Pep Guardiola in Spain versus the reality of how it's actually been.
Does Pep Guardiola make a mental note of that? Does he still remember those days where there might have been a few naysayers from Spain in the press room, and does he carry that with him into a week like this?
It wouldn't even have to be, like I say before with the Atletico Madrid press conferences, it wouldn't have to be examples from 3-4 years ago, but obviously he would. He'd remember that from his time at Barca. He'd even remember it from his time at Bayern, because when they played Real Madrid that year, and obviously Madrid won heavily, there was a lot of glee, again, in the Spanish media about how it panned out. So he'd remember that. But, with the Atletico Madrid thing, I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but he talked about how Madrid played 2 banks of 5, and he said, basically, what he was trying to say was that was and always will be hard to defend against. But he was like, even from the prehistoric times, now and in the future, that will be difficult to defend against. But a few in Madrid kind of picked up on the prehistoric bit and said that was a criticism, and then every press conference since they were like, well, you said this about Diego Simeone, but you did this tonight, and he's like, well, I didn't say this, and then the next question would be like, but you said this, and he's like, well, I didn't, and it was just, you could see when the Madrid press came around this time, and one asked him about styles of play, and Xavi said this, and Ancelotti says this, what do you think? He's like, I'm just not getting into it, because he just knows the way it's going down that same route of you criticise Simeone and whatever. He actually said, don't come looking for me in your styles, your battle of styles. This is nothing to do with me. This is something you've kind of constructed.
And I think maybe people kind of didn't quite appreciate, despite the contrasting styles, the huge degree of respect between Guardiola and Simeone, that was probably blown up to be something that it really bigger than it really was for the last round. And there could be a temptation to do something similar this time, could there? Like, despite the fact that Pep has said in the past that Ancelotti brought him into training sessions in AC Milan and has always had a really great respect for him.
I think there's probably more respect between Ancelotti and Pep. Because the funny thing was, Pep was going out of his way to say, look, I didn't actually say this about Simeone. Simeone did have a bit of a nibble about it. But I think deep down, they probably don't like each other, actually.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that's the case. But with Pep and Ancelotti, yeah, for sure. They were always very close when Ancelotti was in England as well. It's funny, actually, the last time they played, it was Everton. And I remember Ancelotti saying, look, we tried to maybe go a bit more physical and a bit more direct, but City can do that as well. And then obviously you can't really try and outgun them because they're so good at that. So obviously it's a different kettle of fish tonight with Real Madrid. But yeah, for sure, there'll be much more respect between those two than with Simeone, even though obviously in public you'll always get that anyway.
What was your take on how the Manchester City players dealt with the disrespect from the Atletico players? Because it seemed to me, like it became a bit of a street brawl, obviously, and at the end of both legs, really, in the last round. But Manchester City the players seem to brush it off in an okay way. I'm not sure, maybe I'm just reacting to the fact that they won the game in the end and they had the last laugh, literally, but it felt that they did okay and when faced with that sort of stuff.
Well, I mean, arguably, City were better at those dark arts. You can look at it in a positive light or a negative, but they were, well, you could say worse in terms of the time wasting and exaggerating injuries. Obviously, Foden rolling back on the pitch. They did everything that Atletico Madrid do, and Atletico Madrid are normally criticised for. But in terms of handling it better, what I would say with that was when it kicked off at the end. Atletico could have had 2 red cards. They completely rose to the bait. They lost their heads with it. These are supposed to be the masters of it. You'd think what they would do is wind teams up, and then when it kicks off, you can't stand back and watch them implode. But it was funny because it was Atletico who imploded. And City, they only had one booking in that melee at the end, and that was Nathan Ake just kind of being the closest one to Foden and just grabbing Savic and pushing him off him. Like, probably was a yellow card, but it was nothing more than that, whereas obviously Savic could have been sent off for a headbutt. I suppose the only thing that City failed at in terms of the dark arts there was Sterling should have gone down and drew everyone's attention to the headbutt. But they were experts at it. They really were. And again, you can like it or not. Depends on your view.
I made that exact point in the immediate aftermath of the game, Sam, and the City fans at the time hammered me, but now I suspect they're like, well, actually, we should be proud of that, because that's the whole point about maturing in European competition. You're going to come up against Atletico one time, and then the next time you're going to come up against Real Madrid. So they've learned how to deal with Atletico. They haven't yet reached the point where they can get through these 2-legged semi-finals to see the final. What do they need to do? What do they need not to do when it comes to the 2 legs against Real Madrid? How much is Pep going to just let the team be the team tonight and not make any changes, not fall into the trap of the Bayern Munich listening to the players? What's he going to do tonight, do you think?
Well, that's a funny thing, because the idea of him listening to anybody else, well, apart from like his assistants now, regarding team selection, is just completely mad. That's another thing of how he's changed. Like, there was even a bit in one of those Marty Perronel books about his game against Atletico Madrid in 2016. He was like, if we do this, the fans would like it. And you just think, can you imagine him thinking, oh yeah, well, City fans would like this, or the players would like this? There's just no chance. In terms of him making changes, you never know. So last year, on their run to the final, it was obviously different because there was no fans because of COVID. But he kept the same solid team, basically. And it was either Rodri or Fernandinho or Zinchenko or Cancelo. But everyone else was the same. And everyone thought, OK, no more changes, no more tinkering. And then obviously made changes for the final. In terms of what they're going to have to do tonight, they're just going to have to just play their game. They don't have to try and rush for anything. They can see how it pans out. I think removing away goals has meant it's always more likely to go to the second game. I suppose we saw that with Madrid and Chelsea in the last one. So, yeah, the big difference between this year and last year when they got to the final is they're going to the Bernabeu. The crowd is, the crowd can really change things. And as we saw with Madrid, 3-0 down against Chelsea and really on the ropes, they created that goal out of nothing. And I know a big thing for Guardiola during his time at City, but I also think during his time at Bayern as well, is how the team respond to those setbacks. If you concede a penalty or you have somebody sent off or you concede a goal, don't lose your heads and then be in danger of conceding another one straight away. I actually asked Bernardo Silva about that before the Atletico Madrid game, and he said he thinks they're much better at that. I asked Guardiola as well, and he was like, yeah, we're better, but it doesn't mean we're going to go and win. Fine. But, so they're better equipped at dealing with that. But I think that's what they're going to have to watch out for. It's the fact that they can be up in the game. They can be bossing it. They can be having more possession, more chances, and then Madrid just going down the other end and score one goal. And it's how they react to that. So that is going to be the key to the whole tie, I think, over both games.
There's a fair degree of transfer talk around Manchester City on the back page this morning, as well as match preview. That's around Declan Rice at the moment. It's being compared a little bit to the Harry Kane situation, where Manchester City may be dissuaded as a result of the price tag that will be put on Rice's head by West Ham United. But I guess the question is, will West Ham United dig their heels in as much as Tottenham Hotspur did last summer in order to keep their player?
Yeah, well, I don't think City are going to go for Rice.
Right.
I think the idea that they're not sure now about whether there'd be a saga or the price tag, or these are conversations that City would have had ages ago. Normally at this time of year, they're like, okay, well, these are the guys we want. You're going to come, right? And then they go and negotiate with the club. You know, they would have a much better idea of it. They would have known whether they were going to be able to sign Rice or whether they thought it would be worth the saga or not, or worth West Ham digging in or not. Like a couple of months ago, the problem they had with Kane was giving them the assurances that he had this agreement with Daniel Levy and they'd be able to get it done. And then as the summer went on, they just realised that this agreement was worth nothing, basically. And the reason that they signed Grealish and not Kane is not because they had the money for one and not the other. It's because Grealish had a legally binding release clause in his contract, and Kane didn't. And that was the difference. So if they were thinking, oh, we'd love Declan Rice, but it's going to be too difficult, they would have made their minds up on that months ago, I'm sure. So I don't know. I couldn't tell you who they're going to go for instead. But whoever it is, I'm sure they're pretty far down the line with it. But at the same time, a lot of things have been on hold until they get Haaland sorted out, and that seems to be reaching the end game now. So I guess we might start finding out about midfielders and other things soon once they get Haaland sorted. And I think they're really pushing for that now.
So Haaland is effectively not a done deal, but nearly 9/10 there. Does that mean Gabriel Jesus automatically goes? Because he's been linked with Arsenal in the last few days. I wonder, is that just 2 and 2 equaling 4, or is that 2 and 2 equaling 22?
No, I mean, they're kind of linked. But I suppose the main thing with Jesus is his contract runs out next summer. So City fans have always had this debate of, is he good enough, is he worth keeping around? And then a couple of years ago you realise, OK, he's not going to be the next Aguero. But if you appreciate him for what he is as a good squad player, then you won't really be let down. But the thing with that debate is it was always City fans talking from the point of view of, well, we're the ones in power in the sense that he is going to be here, so we'll decide whether, hypothetically, he's good enough to be. But now he's got a year left on his contract, and now he's thinking, well, I'd like to play more, and why would I sign up for another 4 or 5 years of being in and out of the team? And he's out of the Brazil squad as well with the World Cup coming up. So it's not necessarily related to Haaland, especially because he's been playing more on the wing anyway. And I think it'd be a loss to City in that sense because they might lose a bit of variety out wide. But no, it's not any turns. He is thinking, okay, I've got an opportunity to go and play here. And it seems that Arsenal, their higher-ups, have had a good relationship because, Edu's Brazilian. They've got those links from previous contracts and stuff with Jesus' people. And I think they've been talking for a while. And yeah, from his point of view, he's just looking at it now thinking, where do I want to be? Well, how regularly do I want to be playing football in the next few years? And it looks like that's going to be somewhere else.
He's still only 25. Like, there's a possibility that he peaks in the next couple of years and becomes somebody who is much better than he is at the moment. I've one last question for you, and it's kind of a question about Grealish. And so, as a Villa fan, I've seen Grealish play a lot and still think that he's going to be a very effective player for Manchester City in the coming seasons. Why is it that so many players take a good long time to bed into the Manchester City situation? And is there hope for Grealish's long-term future in the form of Cancelo and Riyad Mahrez and a few others who took time to peak, even Bernardo Silva?
Everyone, yeah. I suppose even like people like Sterling and De Bruyne who already at City, they didn't struggle in their first season by any means, but they're obviously better after getting to grips with it. I mean, I can't put my finger on why. It's actually a perfect Athletic article, isn't it, explaining why it takes so long, and it's probably something I'll look into now, especially with the summer approaching. I know with Cancelo, because he'd actually, funnily enough and ironically enough, he'd always played left back for his previous teams in Italy, I think in Valencia as well, but didn't like it. I think he actually fell out with somebody at Lazio maybe about playing left back. He didn't like it. He was always used to just playing down the right hand side. I remember speaking to people when he signed who'd worked with him, and they were like, oh yeah, we've seen his crossing ability, he'll be putting in loads of great balls into the box. And even the ones who thought he would thrive, because some thought he might struggle because of his temperament, they thought it'd be more of a classic right back. And obviously he's been this kind of inverted left quarterback really. He wanted to go after about 9 months just because the tactical demands were just so different to what he was used to. Obviously with Grealish, I suppose it is different as well. You've got less space to run into. You're not in as many kind of one-on-one foot battles. You're touching the ball a lot less. You're not the main man. You're not the one they all look to. So some games, City just go entirely down the right-hand side. So Grealish will be looking over and thinking, I'm not getting the ball here. I know there's been a load of games where Mahrez has been stretching the play on the right, but it's all been down the left. So it's those things you need to adapt to, really. But like you say, you reeled off those players there. I also remember Leroy Sané had a slow start and then obviously burst into life. Bernardo Silva had a bit of a patchy first season. Cancelo, like you mentioned. Rodri, basically everybody. The vast majority of City signings have needed a year to bed in. I think it's mainly because of just the different style of play, the different demands, all the things you need to bear in mind. Like when you're here, you need to be there. He needs to be there, and when he's there, you need to be there. All these kind of things, and it's a very different game to what he's playing at Villa. But also, I think that also works both ways. I think we probably need to appreciate that he's not going to be the same player because he's not been asked to do the same things. Certainly, you would like a couple more goals to show for it, and the price tag's always going to demand that. But ultimately, it's not the price tag, I think, especially when it's City, that demands what's going to be the level of performance. It's going to be the adjustment time, and whether you cost 10 million or 100 million, it's probably going to take you a year or a season to understand what Guardiola wants, and then from then on, you can really hit the ground running. And that's why I've not really got into the Grealish debate too much, other than to say we can have this debate in a year's time. If it's still not working in a year's time, then we can talk about it. But for now, we've seen it all before in terms of players needing time to settle in. So I wouldn't be unduly worried about that.
It doesn't matter. That's the luxury of the quality of the squad they have at the moment. That's
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you can think that's a terrible thing because they don't need a £100 million signing to come in and make the difference. Like Chelsea needed Lukaku to come in and make the difference to win the Premier League, or that's at least how it was painted, and it hasn't happened, so they haven't won the league. Whereas City can make a £100 million signing, and whether you think it's a terrible thing for football or whether you just say, well, that's how good their squad is, fair play to them. That's the fact. They don't need somebody to come in and make that massive difference, which is unusual, and it's not something we've had to get our heads around, really. But there we are.
Are they going to go through?
I think so. I think they're the better team. Madrid haven't played particularly well. They didn't play particularly well against PSG. They didn't play particularly well against Chelsea, obviously, in that second game. The only thing you worry about is they're a team that they won't die. City miss chances as well, and if they miss their chances and Madrid don't die, then you've got a recipe for disaster there. But I think if you're asking me who's the better team and who'll have most of it, I would have to go with City. Yeah.
All right, Sam. Good stuff. Enjoy the games. Thanks a million.
Thanks very much, guys. Always a pleasure.
It's Sam Lee of The Athletic there giving us his thoughts on the games tonight. What do you think is going to happen? Who's going to go through?
I think Manchester City will go through. I think it'll be Manchester City versus Liverpool final. I think Liverpool will beat them in the final. So Villarreal versus Real Madrid it will be, I guess. This is obviously tonight's a tie.
What would the best final be? I mean,
City Liverpool will be the best final. They've put together two cracking games already this season in the Premier League, two really, really brilliant games. So another opportunity.
And the cup
to see that. Yeah, the cup was probably obviously the least of a contest, but the last few minutes were exciting, and also the quality throughout was absolutely outstanding, with the exception of Stefan and goals for Manchester City.
I'm just looking there that Michael Carrick was out having pints with Robbie Keane and Cassidy's on Camden Street at the weekend.
All right, okay.
They were singing. The story's gone from the website that was reporting it. I don't know if that.
And then Keane went over to the Sky Studios, of course, last night.
Yeah.
Put himself in the shop window to become a new manager of some club. He's ready. He's done his badges. So
where would Robbie Keane get a job at the moment?
Well, I think that maybe where could he get a job versus where he wants to get a job, or where he believes he should get a job, maybe aren't the same thing, because he says that he's rejected offers that didn't really sit well with him. It'd be pie in the sky stuff to suggest that Robbie Keane would ever start his managerial career in Ireland, for example. Or I know Damien Duff isn't starting his career here, but do a Damien Duff on it, I'd be shocked if that happened. And on top of that, I'd be shocked if he would start anywhere below the top half of the Championship as well. I'd say Championship. I'd say he'd be excited by a job up there, but I think he's smart enough to know that the Championship is such a chaotic division that if he took a lower half team, he could easily be overseeing a relegation.
It's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah. So I don't know. It's obviously been pretty interesting couple of years for him in terms of not getting an actual gig with the FAI despite being under contract, and you'd wonder how much that actually affects other people's decision making when they look into it. Chances are it's not really that big a story in England at all when they're looking into it.
No. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs. For an effortless finish to your day, it is time for the sports pages.
There are so many idiots out there, so many spoofers. There's a lot of horse.
I think he's a total spoofer.
What do you mean a spoofer?
He's just bullshit.
Ah, no, Eamon, come on, don't be, no, I'm not having that, no.
Don't be. Oh, boy, get me in trouble again. Yeah, we can start with OTBSports.com. Or I can start. I may as well start with the Telegraph then this morning. And the Telegraph is major shock as Mickelson joins Rebels. So, Phil Mickelson showing you who he is. Phil Mickelson last night stunned golf by not only entering next month's US PGA Championship, but also the first Saudi Rebel event in St Albans in June. There you go. Episode 14 of the Football Pod is up. Donegal and Galway rise. Armagh freeze. Mayo hell. So we'll talk to Tommy later on in the week about that. The back page of the London Times. Government will force elite to share cash. This is a bit of window dressing perhaps, or maybe it's real money being taken from the Premier League to the football pyramid, the bottom tiers of it. That's that. The Herald, they've got the big news. Con ready for Dublin return. Boost for Farrell. As O'Callaghan primed for action against Wexford.
What you want to be seeing this weekend is Dublin putting up a score against Wexford. I think that's what I mean when what you want to be seeing if you're a Dublin fan or if you're Desi Farrell. Like I think that maybe over the last couple of seasons the Leinster Championship obviously hasn't really mattered, and it still doesn't matter as a trophy for them, but it does matter now in terms of finding that form, because they have no form to speak about. Conor O'Callaghan has no form to speak about, so you might just worry a little bit for some of the teams in Leinster this year if they actually do get back to that.
City sizing up summer move for Hammer's linchpin Rice. This is the conversation we've just been having. So I got the impression from Stanley he doesn't expect it to happen this year.
No, not at all actually. So yeah,
they'll move on to other targets. And
it sounds like they already have done after they secure Haaland. What they'll do, I do think that price is extraordinary for Declan Rice, isn't it?
I don't know. He's 23. He'll play for you for 10 years. Like it's the equivalent of the Henderson price, right? Like when Kenny Dalglish signed Jordan Henderson, everyone went, this is ridiculous money. What are they doing? Who is this guy that they've spent all this money on? And now you're like, what a great deal. That's like one of Kenny Dalglish's legacy points is signed Jordan Henderson.
Yeah.
You know?
How much was Jordan Henderson?
He was like 13 or 18 million at the time.
Yeah. Like even allowing for inflation, this is not that.
No, but Rice is like so much further ahead of where Henderson was at that stage. If you stick Declan Rice into that team, right, he can play 7 years in midfield and then another 7 years as a centre back.
Like there is that versatility, and the age thing is massive. And like I mean, it's not like he needs to do much to be like he would be the third most expensive signing of all time, by the way. If he went for €150 million, he'd be just a tad more expensive than Philippe Coutinho to Barcelona. We sometimes forget that that's the third most expensive signing in history. It wasn't just a healthy wad of cash that Liverpool had at their disposal. It was extraordinary. It was just below Mbappe and Neymar. And you'd probably have to say like Neymar 222 million quid, Declan Rice at 150 million quid if he puts together a 10-year career where he wins loads of trophies. It probably is worth it. But I think that probably dissuades.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to City. They can just fake another sponsorship deal.
It mattered last year with Harry Kane.
It didn't though. I don't think it was money. I think that he wouldn't sell. I think they would have paid 150. I think that they would have met whatever. If there was a buyout clause, they would have met it.
Yeah.
I don't think it was money in the end. I think it was the fact that Daniel Levy was like, you can't have him.
Right.
It was a fit of peak.
Definitely felt that there was definitely headlines at the time that it was like 100 to 120 was maybe Manchester City's limit, maybe even a little bit lower, and then Spurs like, no, 150.
Yeah, maybe okay. But then was that a 150? And then I'll see then. I'll make my mind up.
And
then
let's bring it up to 175.
Yeah.
But also Manchester City, I think it was also reported at the time about the age profile of Harry Kane
and the wife
and
Irish women's 15. That was a Martin Brennan joke.
Yeah.
Irish women's 15 set to seal contracts for next season. This is a big story from Sinead Castan on the back of the Indo this morning. The RFU will look at having contracts in place for Ireland's women's 15 players by next year's Six Nations, but plans will not be finalised until the new head of women's performance and pathways is appointed, which I suspect is fair enough. Let somebody who is in charge make the decision about who's going to get the contracts, but they've committed to the contracts, it seems. Certainly that's what Sinead's story is telling us this morning. A Roy of sunshine on Leith, Keane in frame for Hibs hot seat. Keane wants it. That's what the Sun are saying this morning. So I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe the right thing for him to do is have a couple of years as a football manager and then go back to being a pundit again.
I'm not sure what the right or the wrong thing is. I just know that whatever the outcome is, it's not going to be boring.
Refresh his football knowledge. Get some European football for Hibs. Be a success. The voice of Zoom. Ten Hag will grill players 1-to-1 to decide their fate. This is an exclusive in the Mirror, which is also in one of the other papers this morning. Eric Ten Hag will begin his overhaul of Man United by holding one-on-one meetings on Zoom with every player to help him decide who stays and who goes. They should film this, right? If you're Manchester United head of content, you're like, Eric, we're just gonna make sure that, you know, for legal reasons, you need to record this to make sure that the players, you can tell which of the players is leaking it, and so we'll have it for future. When you get sacked, we'll be like, oh, here's we knew from the start it was doomed because this is how the conversation went on Zoom.
Yeah, when Eric Ten Hag is interviewing Jesse Lingard on Zoom, he'd be like, is that Paul Scholes' voice in the back of the room?
You presume he's not going to do. It's Legion of Zoom is the headline. The voice of Zoom, or Legion of Zoom. That's the story that they have on the back of the Star. Punchestown, obviously, the 12-page pull out in all the papers, certainly in the Star as well. The racing in Punchestown this week is going to be spectacular. Are you heading along?
I am, going Friday.
Yeah. Well, I wish you well. I hope you come back alive. You have a track record of like coming back damaged from some stuff.
That's highly libelous.
Is it? Did you break an ankle? No, you didn't.
Why?
Just a face.
When was this? Oh, that's the years ago. That's long. I was young then.
You're much more mature now. We must suffer, Pep. It will be painful to stop Madrid and reach Euro final. There is a language of like self-flagellation around Pep, which would be like, what are you doing? The Echo this morning, Christy O'Connor, Cork have won the ground war but face bigger battles against the Kerry machine. He's got great detail on the Newbridge and Nowhere and how the whole thing unfolded from Cian O'Neill's perspective. So he's obviously talked to him and got the chapter and verse on it. Kerry did the right thing. It took them a long time to get there, but they were like, yeah, we'll just play you wherever, we don't care. We're going to play you. We'll play you. We don't care. It doesn't matter. Let's just take all the air out of the balloon.
But like, it wasn't their decision, first of all. Like,
but it is their decision. If they say we will play you there, it's like Mayo screwed up by not saying yes, we'll go to Newbridge immediately. That's a great idea. We'll go there. They were like, nothing to do with us. Nothing to do with us. Not our decision.
But even then, it's like Kerry said on Friday, yes, we'll play you there, and it gets confirmed yesterday. Like, 3 days passed, and Munster Council were like, we can.
Munster Council had no option. Kerry bounced them into it at that stage. But Kerry just bounced them into it straight away and gone, Cork want it there. Oh, Jesus, that's great. We'll go and we'll play you there. We'll have a night out in Cork afterwards.
I don't think that Kerry were ever thinking anything other than that, and maybe they just weren't overly interested with the whole debacle at that point. I mean, I think that this actually benefits Kerry to a point. I think they need Cork to be better than they were last year, and having them at home is one way of going towards that. Of course, if they end up losing the game, they'll look pretty stupid.
Oh,
Kerry.
There's no chance they're going to lose this game.
But I think that they will get a better battle in Parky Wind than they
would have. It's better for them, right?
Yeah. That's just what I said. Yeah, like 100%. This is a chance. There's a chance that this is actually a win for Kerry.
Yeah.
Like, well, I mean, not a win on the day.
It's
I mean,
win-win.
A greater win. A win-win. Yeah. Sorry. A bigger win.
Where were Cork in your power rankings?
Like 15th.
All right, you couldn't even remember. You don't even respect them enough to remember.
Loud overlapped them.
It's 8:43 here, and Ronan Mullen just walked in. Ronan, good morning to you. How are you?
Oh, good lads. How are things?
A quick drive-by on where we are with boxing at the moment. Should we start by talking about next weekend as opposed to last weekend? You pick.
Oh, it's your call. I think the pomp and circumstance around the Wembley fight sort of weren't exactly overridden by the fight itself. I think most people, purists and casual fans, would agree it wasn't exactly a blockbuster encounter, and it possibly just highlighted the gulf in quality between Fury and the rest, because Dillian Whyte's a very competent heavyweight and has shown that against the cream of the division, but Fury just looked levels and levels above him, and it was an emphatic finish to end it, really.
What happens next for Fury? Because his wife was saying that he would come back for the unification fight. That was kind of letting the cat out of the bag pretty quickly.
Yeah, that was it. It was retirement, which he's kind of he proffered that suggestion a couple of times before fights. But to be fair, this is the final fight on his top ranked deal, so there is leverage and negotiations to happen here, and that is like a percentage of leverage, I suppose, that I'm threatening to walk away here, threatening in inverted commas, obviously, because as you said, Paris Fury saying he'll come back for unification. It looks like Usyk's going to fight Joshua in that rematch in July. So, you know, we should have clarity on that by the end of the summer, and you could be looking at another blockbuster fight there towards the end of the year. And just like on the technicalities of a potential matchup with either of those, the Joshua one, I think you'd probably see a similar pattern of fight if he fought Fury, because I just think Fury's operating on such a level that he'll win most fights. But Usyk could be an interesting one, because as good as Fury was the other day, the stature of White, where he's that little bit shorter, there were openings for White if he was able to slip Fury's jab and get in and attack the body. And you'd actually fancy Usyk to be able to do that. He's such a skilled technician that could be a very interesting matchup. So come what may, I think we'd have another few interesting heavyweight fights this year.
He's very lightly fought for somebody who has been a professional for 14 years. It's 33 bouts as a professional. So the whole miles on the clock thing isn't really something that applies to Tyson Fury, is it?
No, and like the old adage around heavyweight boxing is that you tend to age like a fine wine in that regard, and the Klitschko's, Vladimir in particular, probably fought the best run of bouts of his career around his mid-30s. So I think Fury, he is that little bit more fleet of foot and possibly does rely on athleticism, which belies that size, and that should win, you would think, as the years go by. But like what's so remarkable is that when he beat Klitschko in Germany, was it 6 years ago now, that was a total, you know, fighting on the back foot, you know, pot-shotting, whereas the other day he just walked Dillian Whyte down and demolished him. And Sugar Hill and Andy Lee have to get a lot of credit for that huge sea change in style, which you just never see in boxing really, where someone goes from being essentially a counterpuncher to a knockout artist. And like, I know Dillian Whyte was making much play of the fact that there was a shove after the uppercut which landed, but that was about as perfectly picked a punch as you're going to see, and there aren't many people who would knock Dillian Whyte out with one shot. I know Povetkin had that highlight reel knockout, Joshua similarly, but again, you're talking about former world champions here at the very best. So I think Fury is looking like a difficult proposition for anybody right now.
I'm just looking back at Tyson Fury's box rack here, and he fought in Dublin in September 2009 on one of Bernard Dunn's
the Super Saturday, wasn't it?
His Super Band. No, this is September. So
the game was live.
He wins on points. Fury at that stage. That's how long he's boxing, right?
That fight was live on the radio, wasn't it?
This one, I don't think this was Prakorb Udomna.
I do recall Phil Egan will recount his tale of
maybe that's Poonswat.
Willie Big Bang Casey when he fought Regan Doe. I think Fury was in attendance.
He was,
and had been at the Ireland-England game at the Aviva Stadium, and was basically saying, "Yeah, I'm gonna come back here and headline with a world title fight at the Aviva Stadium." And I think most people were looking at him on two fronts, thinking, "Well, you're probably not going to win a world title," because he was still a figure of fun at that stage.
Well, he punched himself. That was what he was most famous for.
And equally, his Irish heritage, to what extent he was going to lean on that, I don't know. But like, he has spoken about it at length. You know, like the fighting for Irish titles and, you know, wanting to represent Ireland as an amateur. But then you see him on St George's Day decked in the English flag. I think he's kind of nailed his colours quite literally to the mast there.
He wasn't even like the main undercard that night. He was like the third fight on the card, and there was 8 fights. That's the night Poonswat actually knocked Bernard out pretty early on and kind of set that whole thing back. But sorry, so you want Usyk to win against Joshua to see what he'll do against Fury?
It's possibly a more interesting fight. Usyk's like peerless in terms of skill as a cruiserweight. Like what Fury's got in that department is comparable, possibly not quite as good. Like Usyk's obviously an Olympic gold medalist, but he's got the size as well and the power that I'm alluding to. So you just think those equalisers would make him a favourite. But I just think from a technical standpoint, it's more interesting. From a promotional standpoint, the Joshua Fury fight is a behemoth. And if you couple that with the redemption arc of Joshua beating Usyk, who, you know, obviously totally outclassed him at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium last year. Joshua's had one of those already against Ruiz. Like the Ruiz one was more of a blast from the left field almost, whereas the Usyk one I think people possibly saw coming. So I don't think it's quite as easy a one for him to rectify. I think Usyk will be the favourite going in against Joshua again.
So you expect Joshua to have, you expect Tyson Fury to have like a long period now in his mid-30s where he continues to fight, that actually this retirement thing is like a contractual issue more than anything else?
I think there is definitely a bit of leverage at play there. It's just whether he's got the cast of characters waiting, lining up to fight him. I wouldn't say the next crop of heavyweights is overly strong. So I don't think...
Sorry, could he fight both Joshua and Usyk?
I think so. I think if he signs another 5-fight deal with Top Rank, like those are two definitely on the ledger. It would be crazy not to fight Joshua just for the revenue that would entail. I think that fight will eventually happen, just like as is boxing's want. It will have lost a lot of the luster if Joshua has, say, 3 losses on his resume by the time that comes around.
Yeah. Yeah, at the same time, boxing's great at hyping that stuff up, and like, who knows? Maybe.
And like, this is not to say this is heavyweight boxing, Ger, but this is heavyweight boxing, and Joshua's got a huge power, so he could be losing every round and still.
We would definitely be watching to the end to see if he can land one of those. Okay, so that's that. The subplot around all that was obviously the Fury relationship with Kinahan. Boxing seems to have moved on very quickly from the whole thing. It was like big story in the build-up. MTK is now no longer in existence, and boxing's like, great, we can forget all about that and move on.
Yeah, and like, I was listening to a podcast last week, Chris Mannix, who I think has been on the show before, and Mike Coppinger is kind of a well-known figure on boxing circles and certainly on social media. They were chatting off the back of it ahead of the White Fury fight, and talking about Al Heyman. I'm sure you're familiar with Al Heyman, who's kind of seen as the puppet master behind all that goes on in American boxing, and they were saying Al Heyman, Daniel Kinnan, the two most powerful men in boxing. In fact, Daniel Kinnan's probably number one. And I had never heard anyone in America talking in these terms about Daniel Kinnan before all this came out. It's very easy to be wise after the fact, but people weren't making these proclamations when he was, as they're saying, running the game. And the point has been made that very few boxing cards go on without, or had gone on without an MTK affiliation, and that was more far-reaching because his advisory roles and his underlings, what their advisory roles were with boxers, like, so far-reaching. And you've got the pro bellum side of things. I was taken aback by how quickly the whole thing escalated in how MTK unravelled quite literally, and what's going to happen next, I think, will also happen quite quickly from a boxing standpoint. The pressures from outside the sporting world are quite clearly closing in. So as long as his spell atop boxing lasted, which is nigh on a decade, I think it's come to a halt quite quickly.
Do his underlings have such power where that would dissuade you from being confident about, I don't know, a top Irish bout happening here? Like Katie Taylor, for example, having a homecoming fight in the next couple of years?
Yeah, because if we're moving on to Katie Taylor, like, if she can beat Amanda Serrano at the weekend, there's almost nothing left on the bucket list, barring, and it would seem like it would be almost a tragedy if she didn't fight here, given what she represents and how emblematic she is of all that's good about Irish sport, and it kind of transcends all that. And for it to be thwarted by security concerns or all that goes around that, I think that seems to be the only grievance that could hold the whole thing back, because not that there's ever been a huge culture of professional boxing in Ireland. Like, the Bernard Dunn days were almost highlights by their rarity. Like Steve Collins in the 90s, and there were little bits here and there, but it wasn't as if we ever built a culture of having massive blockbuster events year on year, whereas Katie Taylor's the kind of fighter that would have justified it. And similarly, there's probably fighters that have come and gone that didn't get the massive nights in Ireland that they should have got. So should Katie win on Saturday, possibly irrespective of that, she's more than entitled to have a big homecoming here.
Okay, so what is on the line for Katie then?
Well, I think 2008 is the last time the number 1 and number 2 pen-for-pen fighters have boxed each other. So that was, I believe, Pacquiao and Marquez, in obviously on the men's side of things. But this is the quality and calibre of a fight we're talking about. It's obviously headlining the main arena, Madison Square Garden, the first time that's ever happened for an all-women bout. And, as Eddie Hearn is wont to say, like, this isn't just women's boxing, this is a marquee event for boxing at large, and you very rarely get to see the two best in the world go head-to-head, close to the peak of their powers. This fight obviously was supposed to happen 2 years ago, just before the pandemic kicked in, and that was going to be, I would say, somewhat off-Broadway. It was going to be an undercard bout on a Dillian White fight, ironically, in Manchester. And Amanda Serrano, while Katie Taylor was certainly keeping up her end of the bargain, was already a blockbuster star. Amanda Serrano possibly wasn't that household name. In the 2 years which have passed, she's blown up in terms of profile. She's got that link up with Jake Paul, and I think they're both making 7 figures this weekend, and it's kind of, it typifies the size of this fight. And I think it's definitely a crossover one. It's not just one that's been spoken about in boxing circles. I think American culture has tapped into it a little bit, and you're looking at a sellout on Saturday night, which is going to be a remarkable occasion.
One last thing. One of the things that Katie Taylor has been is very enjoyable to watch. If this is the most boring fight of all time and she wins on points, that's better for her from a career perspective from this point. She doesn't need to be the brawler this weekend, I suppose, is the point I'm trying to make here.
No, certainly not. And like Serrano is an interesting mesh of styles where she's got power that's possibly not all that common in the ledger of Katie Taylor opponents, but she's not a brawler either. She's like quite technical in how she detonates her punches, so she will carry that threat that possibly Katie hasn't seen in all of her bouts to this end. Like the Pursoon fight, as a comparison, Pursoon was all about that engine and non-stop aggression. I think Serrano has a bit of that, but she also has the technical skills to trouble Katie. So it will be a boxing clinic from Katie to try and navigate her way to victory here. And as you said, it's all about the W. Finals are for winning, and this is like the grand final of her career. I think for the first time since 2012, really, against Ochagawa, you're going into a Katie Taylor fight not like certain or at least confident of an outcome, and I think all those factors play into a really appetising event.
All right, Ronan, enjoy it. Thanks very much. When are you flying out?
Tomorrow. All going well.
Very good. And is there one final press conference at the weigh-in and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, the press conference is Thursday. The weigh-in will be Friday. I think my best laid plans of going to Nets Celtics on Friday are all but gone after the Nets were swept by Boston Celtics, so I'll have to make new plans for Friday night.
Well, in New York, I'm sure you'll find something to keep you occupied. Ronan, good stuff. Enjoy the trip. Thanks very much for that. It seems only certain forwards need a year to settle in, says In Bod We Trust on YouTube. For example, Aguero didn't. De Bruyne didn't. Going further back, Henry and David Villa didn't. For 100 million, shouldn't Grealish be in this category? I think De Bruyne wasn't the automatic Ballon d'Or contender that he is now in his first season, was he?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but could you also make a case that maybe the people that he's pointed out there, like Aguero, Henry, Villa, are just a different player to Grealish, that there's more of a specific role to their place in the team. They're all number 9s. That would feel like doing it discredit to how outstanding Aguero was from the very start, but I think there is a more complicated version to what Grealish's role is. First of all, he's not guaranteed his place every week.
Thierry Henry's in the conversation for the greatest ever Premier League player.
Yeah.
Probably is the greatest ever Premier League player. That's how good he is. So you'd expect him to settle in pretty quickly at Barcelona.
Yeah. And Grealish obviously isn't going to go down as the greatest Premier League player ever. I don't know. I think maybe also as well, some of these examples are far more recent than all those players as well. This is a recent trend for Pep, so I would definitely have hope that Grealish does come very good next season.
I think Mahrez took time to settle in. Somebody's been in touch, and I need to apologise to the good people of Galway. I slandered them. I said that Tala was bigger than Galway, and I'm just trying to find the tweet that has corrected me on this. It turns out I'm wrong, right?
You're close though.
Well, the population of Galway is 79,934.
Yeah.
The population of Tala is 76,119. There's 3,000 in the difference.
However, we just did a census. Those figures aren't out yet.
They're not. I'm backing the good people of Tala to be more prolifically productive, to be riding more often than the people of Galway. No, in fairness, no one's doing that more than the Galway people.
No, it's known for its riding.
Sorry, I was going to get in trouble, a lot of trouble there. It's 8:58 this morning. If you want to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you. Hashtag OTB AM. But anyway, the point stands.
That Tala is big.
Yeah. Cathal Mullaney's up next with the latest sports news. First, here's Pat Nevin on Tuchel and Chelsea.
He's got a really tough summer, and I think that's quite frustrating because I suspect he knows exactly what he would like to go for, where he needs to strengthen. He certainly needs to get 2 to 3 centre-backs in. He absolutely needs to do that. But it's a bit like, going to a disco. If you don't ask the first good-looking one first, as they used to say in the old days, you're going to get caught. But anyway, notice I didn't say women, I just said good-looking one. Could be man, woman, anything, right? I'm very right on here. But he could be left with, not the players he wants to buy, purely because of the situation he's in. And somewhere down the line from that, people will just say,
Yeah.
They will forget that.
Is he a flight risk, do you think? Tuchel's stock is pretty high. Is he a flight risk? I would think he is.
If there was... Well, you think of what jobs might be available. I think he will look to see who's likely to get in and have a look at the finances then, and he will consider it then. I actually think he loves the place. He's had a really nice time there. He has been successful. He's got an FA Cup final coming up. But if they're not allowed to really go and add, and he's maybe asked to go and develop some more young players coming through and use, get the likes of Conor Gallagher back, I don't know if that'll be enough for him. I think that might frustrate him hugely. But if I had to bet on it, I still think he'll be there next year.
Yeah, it can be very interesting to see what happens. That whole ownership situation will be resolved sooner rather than later. So you would assume that they will want to keep the brilliant world-class manager they have. But then owners of football clubs do stupid things very regularly. 9 o'clock this morning here. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. The hashtag is OTBAM on Twitter, or of course you can tweet us at @OffTheBallAM, or you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. Cathal Mullaney is with us. Cathal, good morning to you.
Hi lads, how's it going?
Where do we start?
Let's start with Gaelic Games and the news that Conor McKenna is set to be available for Tyrone's Ulster Football Championship quarter-final against Derry this weekend. It's understood the forward has had the red card he received against Fermanagh rescinded. Yeah, this news emerged last night.
How do you do that? That's amazing.
Yeah, so McKenna was dismissed late on in the All-Ireland champion 7-point win at Brewster Park in the preliminary round of the Ulster Championship, but he looks set to be available for this Sunday's match against Derry. Big boost for Tyrone. Meanwhile, the Munster Council has confirmed Páirc Uí Rinn is the venue for Cork's Munster football semi-final with Kerry. That comes after Kerry agreed to play at the venue with Páirc Uí Chaoimh unavailable due to its staging of Ed Sheeran concerts. The next game between the two counties in the province will take place at Killarney's Fitzgerald Stadium, and that game will throw in at 6 o'clock on Saturday week. A second half goal from Thomas O'Donnell, meanwhile, was the decisive score as Kerry clinched the Munster Under-20 football title last night. The Kingdom overcame the challenge of Cork by 111 to 7 points in Tralee, and they'll play the Ulster champions Tyrone in the All-Ireland semi-final. In action tonight in the Munster Minor Hurling Championship, Clare play Kerry. That game is in 6 Mile Bridge, while Kilmarnock hosts the clash of Limerick and Waterford. In football, Leeds moved 5 points clear of the Premier League's relegation zone last night. They played out a goalless draw with Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park. That result extends Leeds' unbeaten run to 5 matches, while Palace remain 14th in the table. Tonight, Manchester City resumed their quest for a first ever Champions League title. They welcome Real Madrid to the Etihad for the first leg of their semi-final tie, and kick-off there is at 8 o'clock. Action here at home as well in the Women's National League this evening. Shelbourne looking to bounce back from their first defeat of the season at the weekend. They're away to third place Wexford Youths, and the team that beat Shelbourne at the weekend, DLR Waves, take on Athlone this evening. And there's a Munster derby in Limerick with Treaty United hosting Cork City. Action in the World Snooker Championship quarter-finals gets underway shortly after 10 o'clock this morning. 6-time champion Ronnie O'Sullivan takes on Stephen Maguire. Mark Williams goes up against Yang Bing Tao. Both matches underway shortly after 10 a.m. This morning. Last night, of course, Jack Lazowski getting over the challenge of Neil Robertson, despite Robertson making a 147 in that match by 13 frames to 12. In golf, Phil Mickelson has requested permission to play in the first Saudi Golf League tournament in June. The 6-time major champion has been out of the game since controversial comments regarding the new tour earlier on this year. However, his agent says he's asked to play at the LIV Golf Invitational at the Centurion Club in England later this year. And Mickelson has also registered to enter the next 2 major championships. That's the PGA Championship and the US Open. In racing, the Punchestown Festival gets underway this afternoon. The Grade 1 Champion Chase is the feature of the card today. The Queen Mother Champion Chase winner Energumene is set to go off as the odds-on favourite. That one goes off at 5:25, an 8-race card underway at 20 to 4. And also this morning, the fixtures for Ireland's tour of New Zealand this summer have been confirmed. Ireland to play New Zealand in the first test on Saturday the 2nd of July will kick off at 8:05. That game at Eden Park in Auckland. Then the second test the following Saturday, the 9th of July, same kick-off time at 8:05 Irish time. That's in Dunedin. And then the final game in Wellington the following Saturday, 16th of July, again at 8:05 kick-off time, and that's at the Sky Stadium in Wellington.
8:05 is just about acceptable. It's any earlier than that.
Yeah.
If on a Saturday, you're like, oh, come on. 8:05 is perfect, right?
Yeah.
You need to stay up.
Yeah, son. Just coming out of Berghain, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the Australia tour in 17, 18. 19? I don't know, whatever year that was. That was properly acceptable. That was like the Aussies did us a solid that year. Just went
like midday kind of thing.
It was almost, yeah. It was like the games were finishing up at around 12 o'clock.
In my head, the Lions tour matches were much earlier than that, weren't they? They shouldn't have been really, though.
No, I think.
And Super Rugby matches tend to be at that time-ish of the morning, don't they?
Yeah.
So as the best golfer in the organisation, Cathal, it definitely isn't debatable. You're definitely by a mile. Despite all the shiting on that the rest of the lads would do.
Well, did you hear Joe Malloy made level par for a round a couple of weeks ago? Well, what is that? When you hear that,
near level par at the moment.
What's that?
I'm nowhere near level par at the moment. I can tell you that much.
So I'm just going to ask, like, when you hear that, are you like, well, that's cute, Joe?
No, I'm not. I've never gone better than level par, so I can't say anything.
But you have gone par.
Gone close to level par.
Gone close to level par, right? Okay. That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
There's a video idea there.
Oh, there's a celebrity death match.
Yeah.
Do like the Tiger Woods versus Phil Mickelson match with the millions and millions on the line.
What's your handicap?
It's 4 at the moment.
He's better than Joe
by a mile. It's
that's. I haven't played a whole lot lately, so I can't.
Is that like a 4 from somewhere good like Enniscrone as well?
Yeah, that's my home club. Yeah.
Right. So okay. So like
into the
4 on a championship course. Exactly. That's like. That'll be +7 around.
It's all on the day, as they say. It's all on the day.
Most of the inline courses. So your credentials established. What do you make of what's going on with the golf tours at the moment? Where does it end up?
I think they're going to come down quite heavily on the players that go and play in the Saudi Golf Tour tournaments. There's reports this morning that Sergio Garcia is also going to be involved. Obviously, Phil Mickelson is going to try and play as well, and I suspect a few more names will emerge. See, the problem for those players is they have to, I suppose, weigh up whether they want to take all this cash and be greedy, to be perfectly honest about it. And if they do, I think the European Tour in particular, or the DP World Tour as it's called now, will come down quite heavily on the European players that will do it. And they also have to consider the longer term ramifications in terms of their participation and potential captaincy of Ryder Cup teams. Clearly, it doesn't matter too much to them if they are being threatened with not being involved in the future and willing to take money, but to my mind it's just pure and utter greed, because these players are already exceptionally well off. Money to the extent that they're playing for already is huge, and now they're looking to go and play for more money, and I suppose all sports rest on the legacy and the history and tradition of years gone by, and your greatness as a golfer isn't defined by the money that you win. To my mind, it's based on the championships that you win, and we always talk about the debate of who's the greatest golfer in the world or the greatest golfer that has walked, and generally it comes back to Jack Nicklaus has won more majors than Tiger Woods, not the amount of money that they won. So to my mind, players that want to establish themselves as true greats of the game will retain their involvement with the PGA Tour, the DP World Tour, and look to win major championships rather than trying to make money from questionable sources.
The impact that it might have on the rest of the tours, it seems like the Asian Tour are kind of happy to get in bed with them. They're like, well, you know, this is our chance to rival the US Tour. The US Tour and the European Tour. The European Tour is essentially going to feed into and become a feeder of a co-sanctioned. Like, it'll be really important for the Irish Open to get that co-sanctioning from the PGA Tour, because might catapult them into being on the schedule into the future.
Yeah. Well, again, it comes back, the fact if tournaments are co-sanctioned, obviously the purse is going to be that bit bigger, and that's going to attract players over. Also, your time in the calendar, the Irish Open a couple of weeks before the Open Championship at the moment is important too. The Scottish Open is a co-sanctioned event at the moment, as far as I know.
Our best hope is that there's a European swing to the US Tour.
Yes, that would work too. Now, the thing is, players matching up their schedules heading into a major championship is a big thing, and whether they want to play 2 weeks before or a week before. The Scottish Open currently has that nice little slot in the calendar.
Yeah. Some will, though.
Also, I think the K Club obviously is a fantastic venue, and it is capable of hosting big tournaments, as it has already, and it will again with the Irish Open, obviously, and the Challenge Tour. I'd love to see the Irish Open, on the years that it's not in the K Club, rotate back to a links course, which I think will help attract bigger players as well, being so close to the Open Championship if they want to get links preparation. And also, I think Ireland's unique selling point in terms of a golf destination is largely down to the links courses. When you see the tourists coming over here, they want to play the Portmarnocks, and they want to play the Royal County Downs and the Port Rushes of this world, the Carns and Belmullet down to Kerry and Ballybunion, Lahinch and Clare, and that is for players as well. They're unique experiences on courses that they regularly wouldn't play. But we're blessed, aren't we, with the variety we have. Mount Juliet this year, the K Club, Dare Manor obviously as well. But I do hope that they put in that bit of a mix so there's a bit of variety over the coming years.
Carl, good stuff. Thanks a million for that. That's Cathal Mullaney. You can hear more from Carl across the day on our sports bulletins across the Go Loud network of stations. 9 minutes past 9 this morning here on OTB AM. Brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're going to talk hurling with Aidan Fogarty next.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Football Pod on OTB Sports.
Mayo will be top of the ground in that game, and if they have those players back, I think they'll have too much.
I didn't hear a word you said in the last 45 seconds.
What?
Breaking news here on the Football Pod. Rian O'Neill has won his appeal and will be available for the Ulster Championship game against Donegal.
Don't cut out my bit of Mayo there now.
I won't.
The hearing lasted a few minutes.
Get the hop on everyone else and hear the Football Pod first on the OTB Sports app every Tuesday.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs razor with exfoliating bar.
Noel asks, if Galway win the All-Ireland this year, where will they end up on the OTB Mayo FM's power rankings? 3rd, 4th? Well, Owen.
5th.
OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're turning our attention to hurling. Aidan Fogarty's with us. Aidan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How you doing?
Nice quiet Kilkenny-Galway clash coming next weekend, which is kind of a little bit under the radar. We figured time for us to turn a bit of a spotlight onto it. How are you feeling about this?
Yeah, it's a strange one, Ger. It's hard to know how I feel, really. It's once the fixture was made last year, the first thing, of course, was the Brian Cody and Henry Shefflin debacle. So it's like the greatest manager of all time, and he's coming up against his lieutenant. So it's a very, very strange one. Big game in Salt Hill, and it's hard to know which way to go. Looking at the championship so far, it's hard to tell if Kilkenny are going well or if Galway are going well. It's just so hard to tell. But I'm sure the media, Ger, will blow this one up for the weekend anyway.
What would be your headline on it? Would it be master versus apprentice, teacher versus teacher's pet?
Teacher's pet, definitely. I'd say, yeah. No, look, the boys are professional. They're not going to make it about them. Like, it's not about Brian Cody, it's not about Henry Shefflin. The lads will be concentrating about Galway, and they'll be concentrating about Kilkenny, and that's what it's about. It's not about the two boys at all, and it's about getting 2 points on the board and getting to the next stage of the championship.
This seems like it's a new Kilkenny team. Like, it's hard to say that, obviously, because obviously there are so many of the players who we are very familiar with, but it does seem like there's been an evolution in style. There's been some significant changes in personnel. Some players have new positions. It feels like it's not year one. Obviously, it's never going to be year one when Cody's involved. But there's a bang of this could actually be. We need to think about them as a different team as opposed to it's the same team from the last couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think during the league, I think Brian found the new players. Mikey Butler is a big find for me in cornerback. He played wing back the last day. Blanchfield as well. Strengthened it up. Had a great league. And you're dead right. Just a change in personnel and a change in style, the way they play, and a more confidence in the way they play. They're playing the short game. They're playing through the lines a bit more, and they're mixing it with the short and the long. Now, in saying that, it's gas. Like, he's made 4 changes for the Westmeath game the last day, and he dropped Blanchfield, he dropped Keane Kenny out midfield, and I was just looking at it, and I was looking at the size of the players and the players that came in. You know, he had James Maher coming in midfield, strong man in midfield. Donnelly came back in. Walter Walsh is after finding a vein of form. So you might think Kilkenny are moving a bit better, but he's still gone back to the old guard a small bit, and he's gone for size, he's gone for strength. Conor Brown there, he got him centre back as well. And I'd say he's looking at down the line that perhaps if he's taking on the Galways, if he's taking on the Limericks, on the Waterfords, he is going to have to get size, because I know Keane Kenny and the lads done well during the league, but at the end of the day, there is no comparison between league and championship. And if you're not physically built to take on these guys. And even seeing it against Waterford, Limerick the weekend, Waterford struggled to get through the half-back line there, taking hits and knocks, and they need the big guys back, and they need them playing well. And I suppose if you look at Kilkenny, like who have they really played? Have they been tested? This is the thing. If you even look through the league, it was Dublin, Laois, Antrim. They played a Waterford team that was through to a semi-final already, and then they played Cork, and were defeated pretty well in the end in the second half performance against maybe a Cork team that are not firing in all cylinders. And then they started the championship playing Laois and Westmeath. So Kilkenny have not been tested. We don't really know how they're going. Yes, they look like a better outfit, but the only time they have been tested and defeated was against Cork. And in the second half of that, what I'd be afraid of, they went back to their old style. They panicked a bit. So we all know Brian Cody's traditionalist, win your own ball, 50-50 ball into the square. And I just wonder, is the real belief there when it comes down to the crunch, when they're really under pressure, do the players on the field really believe and stick to the game plan of playing it through the lines? Because when they went long, that's what their downfall was.
I mean, we would expect them to be under pressure this weekend, but again, as you say, the league form has so far proven to be largely irrelevant, maybe with the exception of Waterford being as good in the championship as they have been in the league. We don't know where Galway are. That's the other massive unknown heading into this weekend. What's the truth about them?
Yeah, Galway, they're such an unknown entity. They're the Jekyll and Hyde of hurling. If Galway turn up, they can absolutely annihilate you. And I think Henry was disappointed, obviously, with the result down in Wexford Park. It's a game they should have won. They were 6 points up with 8 minutes to go. They should have seen it out, and only for a controversial lead-in score at the end, they got the draw. But really, Galway should have came out there with 2 points. Obviously, last weekend put up a high score, and that's the thing in the championship and playing these teams. It could go down to scoring difference, and that's why you have to be racking up massive scores. Because if you're on same points, it's going to come down to scoring difference. So Galway last weekend looked superb, but it was, again, no disrespect to Westmeath. You want to be beating Westmeath if you're in contention to a Leinster final or getting to the Ireland series. So they're an unknown entity. But I think Henry will have Galway just firing the weekend. It's in Salt Hill. It's a massive game. This is the game that has been penciled in from day one in the Leinster Championship, and they are an unknown entity. And as I said, Galway could turn up and blow you out of the water, but I think it'll be a close game. I think Kilkenny are playing well, and I said that the changes they have made have improved them, and they're playing to a better style. And it's just if they stick to that style, they're going to be a hard team to beat. But Galway are always thereabouts, and they could take off if they win Sunday. They could take off, and it could be All-Ireland contenders in the space of 5 minutes.
It sounds like you're not overly convinced on whether or not Kilkenny are going to stick to this style of play. And what does that say about this team, that maybe they're not sure about it? Yeah,
I think they're just not sure about. Maybe there's just the league and the lack of maybe time wise, because it's just match on match on match, and for these things to come off, and even seeing maybe against Tipperary the weekend, you have to be in training, and even to put one aspect of a strategy into your game plan, you have to be in training and doing it constantly. Like, these things just don't happen overnight. And when the guys are so used to maybe playing the long ball and winning your own ball, and like when you say that, you play to your strengths. You have Walter Welsh, you have TJ Reid, you have John Donnelly, great men in the air. So maybe there's a reason to play the long ball, but just against Cork, it just faded out. So my only worry would be if they panic and go back to that style. But maybe during the championship and the few training sessions they have, that they'll stick to it. And look, they have to mix it both ways anyway.
Yeah, look, do you think that they're playing to their strengths now, or have they moved away from playing to their strengths?
No, look, I think they're playing to their strengths. I think, look, that they're pulling out a third midfielder. They're leaving two inside. They're getting into the middle third. Look, it's amazing. Like when they're champions, they're just looking at the Limerick style of play, and they're getting it to the middle third, and then they're looking up, and they're playing it into the full forward line of Billy Ryan, where she's darting here and there, and TJ Reid started the last day at full forward. So they have a target man in the air, which is always Brian Cody's ethos anyway. Have a ball winner in there, and then you have Billy Ryan playing off them, and the half forwards swarming in around as well. So they've definitely changed their style. Like, even for Cody to bring out a third midfielder would be kind of unheard of unless the other opposition brought out a player. But for him to kind of do it off the cuff straight away, that's a change in style, and it suits the Kilkenny team. Liam Keown or Mossy Keown started there for the league most days as well, and he was playing to that kind of format and played very well. So Kilkenny are playing to a good strategy, when they're on top. So, like, when it gets to the middle third, they're playing decent ball in. Before, they were just hitting sky balls in, but now they're putting it to the left and right of the player, like any team is trying to do. They're trying to get it to that middle third, trying to have then the halfback have a look and put a perfect ball in to the guys to give them the 70-30 chance of putting it over the bar. You know, that's the way they're playing.
What's the crack with Aidan Mullen out at midfield? Is that like you can do that, get him some game time out there, like, or is that maybe something that they're thinking about further down the line? You need a massive scoring power from further out the field.
I think so. I think Aidan Mullen probably has been fired on all cylinders since his injury, and he's back in the team, and he needs game time, and he needs 70 minutes in him, and he needs to build up his confidence. And midfield is a type of area where there's a lot of ball. He can get onto a lot of ball, and he can go forward. And Aidan Mullen is a brilliant forward, but he hasn't been playing that well in the forward line. And in midfield, you get more to express yourself in midfield. You're not kind of marking a player. You're just kind of getting around the place and getting fitness into you. And I think Aidan Mullen is going to be there in midfield for the foreseeable, and played very well the last day. He was on team of the week, but he needs to build up his confidence. And I think forward-wise, there's options. Kilkenny have a lot of options. You have Cody starting corner forward, came out wing forward. You have Aidan Mullen in midfield. He can move in. And it's all about interchangeable. The day of standing in their own position is totally gone. So you have to have guys that are interchangeable, that can move into the half-forward line seamlessly. And if you're under pressure in the full forward line, that they can take scores from out the field. And you can see it in Pádraig Welch being centre forward. He's moving from left to right. He's taking scores off the sideline, which Kenny weren't able to do the last couple of years.
Like we maybe forget a little bit about how good he could be, and like he's potential hurler of the year material at some point in his career. So if he was to find a position that allowed him to express the full of his talent and get some of that confidence back, that's a game changer.
Yeah, no, it's huge. And Kilkenny have struggled for midfielders for the last couple of years. You know, they were injured. You had Liam Blanchfield going in. You had Richie Lahey was going in, never really made it. Richie Reid was in there. So they really are looking for a midfielder to kind of nail down that position. And it's the type of position that he can roam in. We found him up in the full forward line the last day. He's back in his half backs, you know, the other day. But I think for Mullen, I think he has the hurling, but it's just his confidence and his lack of hurling the last 2 years due to injury, and he needs to kind of get it back. And time is kind of running out for him to make. Like, he came on the scene, blew the whole thing away, but he has dropped his standards, and maybe it's due to his injuries and things. But midfielder would be a position where I'd see him flourish.
All right. Well, I think everybody who loves the game wants to see him express himself and reach his full potential. So we wish him all the best with that. A debate that they wandered into last night on the show was Limerick current team versus your team. We didn't tell you about this in advance, I don't think. We're springing it on you now.
Who had you on the show talking about that?
Well, Mick kind of wandered into it accidentally when he was talking about how any one of that Limerick team can end up being man of the match. And I was like, I don't know, if you look back at the track record of All-Ireland finals that you won, it wasn't Henry man of the match in every game. It was actually a random selection of people.
Brian Cody.
Who were man of that. Did they give Cody 1 year?
08, yeah.
For the 5 in a row. And that was ridiculous.
That's right. 08, Brian got man of the match. Yeah, I think Eddie Brennan scored about 2-1 that day. He was disgusting in City West.
Do you win a car for man of the match? Was it something? There was something ridiculous.
No, you get a bit of crystal. Yeah. So
right,
if there's a car, it's ABC and all together right there.
All right, this is the good stuff. So, in your head, when you've been thinking about this, which I'm sure it's at various stages people are like, but this Limerick team are really good. They're really, 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 really good. We know they're very good. How would they match up against you guys?
Yeah, they're really throwing me in the spot here, Ger, right? Yeah, actually, you'd often think about taking them on and different positions. And look, even for myself, I'd be looking at Sean Finn and I'd be thinking, yeah, I'd take this guy, no problem, you know. And it's as easy to say it when you're sitting on your couch on a Sunday evening saying, yeah, I'll take him there, no problem. But to be serious matchups, to be a serious contest. And as you said, look, with Kilkenny, the thing was when someone didn't perform, as in like maybe a Henry or, you know, a Tommy Welsh or a JJ, then you had a Jackie Tyrrell stepping up. You had different lads stepping up at different times, and that's what's kind of happening to Limerick. And we had this fantastic panel of guys coming off the bench, and it was all kind of look, Kilkenny's second team would be the second best team in Ireland. This kind of crazy talk, but yeah, you'd have to get the matchups. I think Hegarty on Eddie Brennan and Brian Hogan on Keane Lynch, and we never really, well, when we say we never did stats, we did stats, but I think Brian never really called them stats. There were just kind of meetings about what we were going to do and things, and I think we'd have to sit down and we'd have to really think about who we're going to be on. But a lot of it will be just a dogfight. In fairness, our team, it was just the fight, the fight that was in us, and Limerick are really showing that. When I was thinking about Limerick this year and kind of comparing it to ourselves, I was thinking, what do they have to do to kind of keep the team going? And there was two things for me that stood out. I said they have to keep the hunger in themselves, which they've proven. Their tackling, their intensity, their drive, and just their mentality has to be there, and that's there in droves. And maybe just do something different. From our point of view, probably 2009, 2010, 11, with that great Tipperary team, we felt as if we were slipping, just not slipping, but teams were beginning to catch us just slightly. And we just felt that we had to do something different. And even Connacht, by pushing up Kyle Hayes, that was something different straight away up to the full forward line. So if to keep the hunger in the panel, do something different, nothing major, nothing fantastic, but just keep teams thinking on their toes, that you're not too, that the teams that won't know that what you're going to be doing from day in and day out. And
my current argument is that your team is better, right? It's still TBC in history.
Obviously, Ger.
Well, time is on Limerick's side, right? The one thing that you guys had was that you had great rivals, in that there was a brilliant Cork team who obviously ended up imploding a bit because of the strikes, that was at the start of your period of time being a great team. But that wasn't like a team which had absolute legends of the game. And then the great Tipperary team came along and stopped the 5 in a row. But in a way that actually, retrospectively, makes your rivalry with them even stronger, that they were good enough to actually win and to get over the line. Limerick have had good individual teams. Galway came and won their All-Ireland and then went away. Since then, they haven't had a team who have been clearly the second best team, or who are good enough to push them. Like, they kind of need Waterford. If history is going to judge them as an all-time great team, they need Waterford to get there and to be an all-time, to be a team that can win an All-Ireland. I guess what I'm saying is you had better opposition over that period, at the start and at the end. In the middle, certainly you were winning All-Irelands, and none of those teams were able to hold a candle to you. At the moment, Limerick needs somebody to emerge from the pack who are nearly as good as them, and who actually beat them once, to make us all think, actually, you know what, this is an all-time great team.
Yeah, it's a valid point, and it's a point that we would have talked about before. I just said the Cork team came along when we were there. Then there was a very good Waterford team, probably coming to the end a small bit with the Tony Browns and the Ken McGraths. Then you had the great Tipperary team, fantastic team through the years. So we had massive rivalries through the years, and teams that could possibly take us down on any given day. And that kind of heightens the sport. If you look at any sport, if you look at soccer or rugby, whatever, when you have a rivalry and you're just barely winning the games and getting over, and just the intensity and the aura around it, you suddenly just become a kind of a better team. And I'm not running down Limerick at all, they're fantastic, but you nearly would love a Kilkenny team that we have in this day and age, just to put them to the pin of the collar, see what they're all about. Because if you look at Tipper, probably in transition a small bit. Kilkenny the last couple of years trying to find a few players, a small bit of transition as well. Waterford went off the boil for a while, albeit they're probably the second best team in the country as well. Galway as well lost a lot of high profile players as well, and Clare kind of had to do a rebuilding strategy with Loan, all in the last 3 to 4 years when Limerick were coming along the scene. And that's not running down Limerick. Fantastic, they've won All-Irelands, and they are the best team in the country. But as you said yourself, you nearly want, Waterford are probably the closest, and you nearly need a team just to be kind of testing them at times and showing how kind of frail they can be maybe during the matches, and they're there for the taking.
Sorry, go ahead.
That would probably then you'd be saying, right, well, these guys are actually, they have the mentality for this. They're men of steel, they're hard men to beat, mix them anyways. Then you really see that the Limerick come out. And I think you would see it if you had a rivalry. I think Limerick would still be on top.
That's the thing.
To make them a greater team.
So you say you'd take Sean Finn. If we can go into this time machine and Taggy, you're player manager of the Kilkenny team and you're up against Limerick. Let's go through some of the matchups. Who's marking Gearóid Hegarty first of all?
Gearóid Hegarty, I would put, who would you put? I wouldn't put Sheffield on Gearóid. I would put probably an Eddie Brennan, probably a guy to turn. No, actually, hold on. Eddie Brennan would be in the wing forward. Hegarty. Tommy Welch.
Tommy Welch and Hegarty. So then
there's only one man for him, yeah.
So
Tommy
then
Welch.
Who goes on Cian Lynch then if Welch is occupied?
Cian Lynch. I'd push up Brian Hogan onto him. Yeah.
Brian Hogan, okay. What about Kyle Hayes then? I'll only do 40s, by the way.
Kyle Hayes, is he full forward or is he wing back?
I guess let's go with full forward. Let's go with the current Limerick team. Full
forward. I think JJ would handle Kyle Hayes, the full forward. I think JJ would be very cute, and I don't think he'd be on as much ball as you'd imagine he would be. But to be a serious matchup, and especially in the air as well. JJ, look, he was just God in the air, so that'd be a serious matchup in the full forward line.
And then Tommy was saying on Sunday that there's 4 pillars of this Limerick team. Those are 3 of them, and the 4th one is Tom Morrissey. So who would mark Tom Morrissey from that Kilkenny team?
Tom Morrissey, I think he put a runner on Tom Morrissey. I think likes maybe we put Eddie Brennan on Pádraig Maher before on the wing back line, and Eddie we just went at him and just turned him. And I think if you run at that half back line of Limerick, there could be frailties there. It's either getting the ball over the half back line or get them on their back feet and turn them. That's what I'd be trying to do, and I'd be putting pace in there big time. And I'm putting ball winners as well. You know, you still have Henry Shefflin there. You'd have Gorta there as well.
Richie
in
Power.
The square, I think. If Richie Power, Richie Hogan, TJ Reid.
It's not a bad team.
It's possibly the best team of all time.
And I haven't even mentioned my own name yet.
There you go. Well, you're player manager, so it's.
Well, they don't have Cody, you see now, actually, as a result of that.
Yeah. I might play sweeper, get the handy role. Yeah.
And who's Jackie Tyrrell picking up?
Jackie Tyrrell is Hurling Glan. Yeah. Definitely.
Oh yeah. Wow.
To be met for him, I think.
Fire with fire.
Absolutely fire with fire. Glan's a bit of a hothead. Jackie took no crap from anybody. And when you give Jackie a job, I remember we put him on Lark Harbour there over the years, and he was so meticulous. You know, he even knew what boots Lark Harbour was wearing. So if he was on the ground, he'd have a quick look up, and if he saw a pair of boots, that was Larry, and he's up and gone. So I think Gillane and Jackie would be a serious contest. And the thing is, the way Limerick play, they're trying to isolate Gillane the whole time. Jackie'd love that.
We need some kind of AI computer programmer to program these games. So
yeah, what was that show on Bravo, Ultimate Warrior was it called? Or and they would like put people from like various, like a gladiator up against World War II soldier and see who would actually win. We need to get those people to do a high budget Limerick versus Kilkenny match, see who would actually come out on top. I sense that you'd think that those Kilkenny players would win most of those matchups.
Well, look, I'm not going to let down my own, so I would, to be fair. Look, as I said, we're the type of team that I remember Tipperary in 2010, and all we could think of was Tipperary. We didn't mention it in the dressing room. We didn't talk about them really in the dressing room until the day actually came. But in the backs of our heads, all we wanted was Tipperary, and I think we'd be fair up for it. We'd be fair driven, and I think we'd have the hurlers and the bite and the physicality as well. I know these lads are machines, but give us a couple of years to be in the gym, and we'll go back and we'll bulk up and we take them on.
Am I right in saying the 5 in a row is Henry's cruciate? That's that game, isn't it? Lars' hat-trick is Henry's cruciate, the same game, is it?
Yeah, same game, yeah. And Brian Hogan was injured as well. John Henderson was centre back and Brian Hogan was missing as well, so Brian and Henry was out, yeah.
It's really unfortunate that for the biggest game of the history moment that the best player of all time is unavailable. Or like plays 12 minutes. Yeah.
He played 12 minutes and hobbled off, yeah. But like in fairness, that day Tipperary were...
No, they were great.
sublime.
They were, but you'd love to see what, like, if Lars scores his hat-trick and Henry's playing, what the outcome is. Maybe they still win, and maybe it's like they win by a point, but it's one of those moments that we can speculate in the darkness. Anyway, look, we ended up talking about all that. One last thing, right? Clare. Our Clare team now that everybody needs to be scared of, because they suddenly have a forward line that has confidence and depth, and it's not just Tony Kelly anymore.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. I was thinking, would I be afraid to go to play Clare? I probably wouldn't be afraid. I probably think that we could beat them. But in saying that, if you're looking at the teams around, and we mentioned it maybe beforehand, maybe the teams aren't at that levels that they were before. Clare are probably looking for third place. They're up against Cork this weekend, an absolute massive game. But the thing with Clare is, and I fancy Clare before the Munster Championship. I didn't see a whole lot of them, but I know the way Brian Lohan puts a team together, and he's mixing it both ways. There's a fight in them, and he has a direct ball. Look, he's a bit old school. He has Peter Duggan in the full forward line, Shane O'Donnell back going well. As I said, Tony Kelly, not the main man, John Conlon. They look just very good. Well set up, a real hard team to beat. But they played a Tipperary team maybe that were very poor on the day as well. So there's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. But I would think they might scrape through for third place. And if they got a bit of momentum, got their tails up, they could go a long way. They really could. I think, they played direct. They play really, really good hurling. Their backs are swarming. But have they shown their cards? That's the thing. Like, it's championship. You have to show your cards at some stage. But would I be really, really afraid of meeting them in the Ireland final? Possibly not yet.
No, but you definitely would give them the opportunity to progress. In this game, this weekend, if they do what we think they can do to Cork, then all of a sudden, like, I just think that they have enough talent there that on a day, Tony Kelly could go crazy and score 211, and suddenly it's like, oh, how did that come from? Like, he's that good. So we'll have an opportunity to reflect on that this time next week, hopefully. Aidan, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thanks a million, lads. Appreciate it.
It's Aidan Fogarty there. I mean, it was a good team they had. It's hard to argue. We didn't even mention Owen Larkin. That forward line is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's an absolutely outrageous team. There's definitely a bit of recency bias in anybody who says that Limerick are definitely better. Like, obviously, the reason why the conversation has come up, though, I think, is because of the manner in which they won the All-Ireland final last year. It was just a complete destruction, and it did have hallmarks of 2008 about it. So I think that really kind of intensified the conversation. I remember Eddie Brennan being on the show, I think, a couple of days afterwards, and was like, cool the Jets on this just yet. That there is, like, and I do think that there's obviously a reason why he's saying that, but also I think we sometimes just forget how awesome that Kilkenny team was, even though it's pretty hard to forget that.
Young TJ, young Richie Hogan.
TJ was captain in 2010, wasn't he? He would have lifted Liam McCarthy as to cap to 5 in a row. Like,
I don't know if you recall, but Henry showed up to training and was at training, and there was like multiple thousands. It was like the 1978 All Blacks game, and I remember there was a piece on that night on Off the Ball, and one of the local reporters was like, it's like Lazarus, risen from the dead. But if they just said, no, he's not playing, would that have completely changed everything? And the game plan would have been completely different, and so he wouldn't have been involved, and Richie Hogan would have started.
Well, it was definitely better than him playing 12 minutes, I think. I think that was definitely the worst case scenario. But they must have known going into that game that there was a live chance that could have happened.
They must have. All right, okay. The debate will last forever, it turns out. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Devo says, to be fair, New Zealand get fecked over when they play in the Northern Hemisphere. The World Cup final in England in 2015 was on at 4 a.m. in New Zealand, and that was their best ever performance. It was such a dominant, effortless flow to their game, and that was the absolute peak of the Dan Carter era. Here's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio for you today. OTB Gold at 1 o'clock is Ronnie Delaney in scintillating form. Dadcast at 3. Barry Geraghty at 4. OTB Gold is Jerry Eisenberg at 6. Barry Geraghty autocorrects to Barry Greatly, which is good. I would just sign my text. It was autocorrect. Sorry, it was an accident. Join us tomorrow from 7:30. We're talking Champions League with Mark Lawrenson and Nathan Murphy, rugby with Matt Williams, and much more. Right now, we're bringing you Monday Night Rugby and some Billy Joe Padden goodness. Enjoy.
Like, that's what I mean, you can't fault the players because like their work ethic, and there's such a fine line between patronising as well, because like this is international rugby. But
see, on the not faulting them, I'd quibble a touch with you. The context, I think, is the headline news, but we do have a situation where the out half Nicole Cronin missed 2 kicks, one against France, one against England from
gimme range. Call a spade,
yeah, like probably just not good enough. And whether you're amateur or professional, for instance, we're talking a lot of GA this evening, so we'll criticise amateurs there if they don't perform certain basics, and so that was a big one. Now the context is she's converting from a scrum half, which again is all important. Like the line out, we're seeing instances where balls just should be caught. You know, the throw was good and they should be caught. Same with handling errors. Probably decision making. That first half where they were under the cosh and they could have, the free kick could have kicked for touch and moved up the pitch. They tried a set move which came to nothing and under more pressure. Some of the missed tackles, you'd have to say, are questionable again, regardless of amateur professionalism.
But is that though, like, questionable when you have players that their conditioning is on another level, and you can see that when you're up close and personal, like with these players, like it's just not comparable. These athletes are far stronger. They're far, like when we talk about this in the men's game, when we talk about, like, we'll say South Africa, like just stereotypically, it's not. You can have a go there because they're both teams are professional, but these girls don't have the conditioning, they don't have the training hours that they do. So
would you say though we've seen this tackling trend across more than just the English game?
Well, we have. We certainly saw it against France. We certainly saw it against Wales in the latter stages, but we didn't really see it against Italy because it was more of a level playing field. This is the point I'm trying to make. And when you said it there earlier, Joe, when you see a country like Italy giving out 25 contracts now, they're retainer part-time contracts, but it's because they know they're going to the World Cup, and you don't want a free pass to be given here because Ireland aren't going to the World Cup. Let's say Ireland were going to the World Cup, they had qualified. Would the IRFU be doing something what the Italian Union were doing and giving out 25 retainer contracts to the players? Like I said, to give them like a fair chance of competing at this level. Like everyone knows that they're light years behind, and it's very hard to see how they're ever going to compete like in the near future with the likes of England and France. That's the reality of it. Yeah. But when you go below that, they don't have a fair chance to compete, and that's the point I think I'm trying to make, that it's very difficult. Of course you can be critical of, you know, missing a kick in front of goal, and I would agree with certain missed tackles in that, but by and large it's not a level playing field. So I think we have to acknowledge when criticism is fair, and also when other people above them could be doing more, I think, to give them a fair chance.
Well, people above them could be doing more, agreed, absolutely. I would say, look, some of the missed tackles against Wales, for instance, were of a standard where you could criticise them, and Wales have been professional for 2 to 3 months. So, you know, and also, for instance, the coach, Greg McWilliams, bringing a huge amount of positivity. Lots of players have queried when he knew that the Sevens players were departing why Sene Nwupa was not in the squad over the previous number of weeks to get on board with her teammates, to practice calls, and the defensive system has changed a touch. So suddenly she goes from not involved at all to starting. And equally, Emer Considine seemed to maybe be struggling for form, dropped for the Italian game in the knowledge that she'd have to be then put in against England. Maybe the Italian game a chance to rehabilitate confidence. So I'm not saying it makes a damn bit of difference against England, but I think it would be wrong of us to go, well, they're powerless to do any better. I think in certain aspects, if they're being honest, we should be expecting a bit better from amateurs, even amateurs.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I hope I'm not trying to be like, oh, we can't criticise the players at all, because like they don't want sympathy, they don't want people like to give them a soft touch. And you're right, but I suppose like international rugby, like it's a results-based business. Greg McWilliams knew that he would have these best players available. I agree with you, it probably could have been managed a little bit better, because even like Sene Nwupa, who's played very little rugby over the last while, and maybe that showed, like her technique was pretty poor and she couldn't have argued with the red card. So there's just so much wrong, you know, like Lindsay Pete, which you started this conversation with, like it's very hard to know where to start. But and I know like not everyone buys into women's rugby, and that's absolutely fine, but you said it, Joe, like the train has left the station now. There are thousands of people who are into it, and that's the reality of it. So like Keith kind of mentioned it there, like I don't know what the answer is either. Like is it time for the 7s and the 15s to be separate entities? But then you're weakening kind of the 15s team, because you can see how well the likes of Bavian Parsons, Amy Lee Murphy-Crowe, Lucy Mullen, how well that these girls played, particularly against Italy. They were brilliant, like these players. So it's very hard to know, and I certainly don't have the answers, but people who are paid a lot of money should be thinking about this, that what's the best way to go forward.
Yeah, apologies Keith, come in on any of this, including Keane's last point there, the 7s, 15s dynamic.
Yeah, well, look, for me, I don't know that we have a huge numbers of people that are coming through, and there is pathways, of course, there is, and but for us, it seems as if Ireland are trying to accelerate in as many ways as they possibly can. I think to be honest, I think it's very difficult. I think when the 7s is something that may bring more women into the sport, that may be something that you want to hang your hat on. But you'd like it to be able to do both, and I don't know that we can have separate teams, if I'm honest. But having different competitions on at the same time means you're always going to be in a very difficult situation. There's the idea again. I'm just going to go back to commerciality on this, and it isn't about saying exactly how much women need to get or what way it is. I think very few people would be giving up their job at the present moment in time to go for a professional rugby contract, because I don't know that amount of money is there. So what it is to try and make things a bit easier and to try and be able to devote more time and attention to it. But I mean, these girls are devoting a huge amount of time and attention to it. But I do think we're at this moment in time where we've come from a very difficult period and non-qualification, and it's time to build it back up again. And it hasn't gone well for us. And if we were, again, being brutally honest, the one game that we should have won was against Wales. And the other ones are not like with like. And look, I can tell you, and again, the reason I compare it to professional or to rugby, international rugby, men's rugby, back when I started in 92, was we worked a half day on Wednesday and then went and met up to play. And you were back in the office again the day after the match. And that was the nature of it. And it went full bore because the whole of the international game went full bore professional. That's what happened. I don't know what the full conversations have been in relation to the women's game about the game going fully professional. And so for me, it feels uncomfortable watching a fully professional team playing in a Six Nations game against an amateur team. That doesn't seem to work right either.
Well, there's a comment on YouTube from Jessica Hannon. You wouldn't let an amateur boxer fight against a professional. Watching that scrum walk over our front rows yesterday was dangerous. These girls are in the gym every single day. It's shocking. So that's further to your point about safety. How would you?
We've had this even in the men's game. Sure. And the boys' game, and where you're saying, well, are you entirely happy with people lifting in the line out if they're not doing it professionally all the time, lifting somebody up to a height? That's where the game, for me, sometimes shows a little bit of intransigence, that they don't want there to be any changes from the laws between one age group and another, between professional and amateur, between men and women. And it can still be the same game, but there can be nuances that would go to it. I don't know about that, but I do know it becomes far harder to lift people safely in the air unless you're practicing to do it an awful lot. And if you don't get the chance, or whatever it is, or somebody else comes out and they haven't played a huge amount of rugby, we know that would rarely happen now, but it did happen in times past. I just think it's at an awkward moment in time.
And to that end, actually, how would you work it? Say, for instance, there's huge pressure, and I think, Keane, you were talking to Greg McWilliams, and he suggested some kind of professionalism or some kind of contracts are in the pipeline. So say overnight, Keith, we have 2015s players who are contracted, and say it's just about enough to tempt them to leave their careers. And I'm sure a lot of them, as you rightly say, a lot of them will say, well, for the money you're offering me, I'm not sure I'm giving up the next 5, 6, 7 years of my career development. But say you get 15 or 20 to agree. What's the best use of their time day to day? Is it to play in-house matches, do you suspect? Is it to train away full time but then play in the AIL? Maybe that brings in safety issues there, I'm not sure. Is it to subsidise contracts so that they go play in the Premiership full time or elsewhere? How would it work in the short term, whilst agreeing that long term pathways and bringing more players through is ultimately where they're if you have to go over the next decade?
Well, I think you need to make certain that they're playing here because you want to grow the game here. And there are elements, I think, that are certain. For me, I would see it not as being fully professional, but being more professional in terms of some money, a huge amount of more support that's required, more technical training, more training camps where possible, maybe the separation of the two teams, or maybe a guarantee that the competitions won't intersect, which might be a more realistic one to do. And it's funny, I remember, again, I'm harkening back just because it's very similar. Jim Staples, who played with me in Ireland and Harlequins, when the game went professional, he's the first year Harlequins played, training was in the evening time. professional, because a lot of guys wanted to work and they were uncertain whether they wanted to do both. And after a year or two, Jim said, I don't want to do this. I love playing rugby, but this isn't my job. This is actually getting in the way of my job. So he went and continued to work. And that's, that becomes a decision. So it was quite interesting for guys that were 21 or 22 years of age back in 95 or 96 to say, yes, I'll definitely take a contract and that will be fantastic and I can make that decision. It's different if you have a spread of players that are already working or have a profession and want to do very well with that, whether it can fit in or not. And that's what makes it so complex. And I think England have been capable, they're a much bigger union and have been capable to put a lot more money into it. And they're also beginning to generate bigger amounts of income for it. So there's a sort of circle there that if you can make it big enough and get enough of people through the gate, you might be able to pay more money, you might be able to get better sponsorship, higher levels of income coming into the women's game so that you can ensure that this can be done at a higher level. I don't know, it's changed incredibly quickly. I mean, we're talking the last 2 or 3 years, whereas I think England did pay and then didn't pay, and now they're back paying again fully. But there was chopping and changing as to what that would happen. We have been left behind, but it's unusual to have an international game and a competition that it isn't entirely equitable in terms of that. So that makes it a really awkward time.
Yeah, it sure is. I'll give you final word, Keane, on the big picture. Because, you couldn't fault the effort in the first half was outrageous against, as you said, physically a stronger team, the last-ditch tackling to keep it 10-0. You kind of saw almost, in some respects, the most important aspect, which is a real hunger to do well. And then the various things we've discussed come to play in the second half. Final thoughts on the whole situation?
Yeah, well, I thought it was encouraging that, I was chatting to Greg McWilliams, like I said, after the game, he did say that contracts were in the pipeline now, and he said, he wants it to happen sooner or later, because of course he does. From a head coach's point of view, he wants as much time as possible. So we don't know what in the pipeline means in terms of time frame. It'd be interesting. David Nusafora, the next time he's up, I'm sure it's going to be something that's put to him. We got to be realistic. I don't think anyone is expecting massive contracts to be handed out here, because it's worth pointing out that the men's and women's sevens contracts are not paid all that well. So loads of them do work as well. Yeah. They're essentially part-time contracts. So all these girls who've gone off now and they'll play in the Langford sevens, a lot of them are either in college or still working. It's the same with the men. The amount of work and dedication that those sevens players put in, which is an entirely different story, but it's very much linked. You saw after the men's team got to the Olympics, a few of them retired because it just wasn't worth it, because they were going, okay, well, I'm missing out here on years of being on the career ladder. So we've already seen it happen. Even I was talking to Billy Dardis, the men's sevens captain. He's gone into a full-time job now as well, which up to the Olympics he was giving her all to it. So that's the reality of it. No one's expecting them to be massively paid or anything. It's just trying to give them a fair chance. So sooner rather than later, like Greg McWilliams says, but like Keith has touched on, it's about finding where that money is going to come from.
Yeah, there are commercial realities, as Keith said as well. So it's complicated, and for sure a very tricky point for all concerned. But it is worth mentioning for sure. It was an extraordinary one in Leinster. Wexford, third from bottom in Division 4, beat Offaly by 3 points. They scored 1-7 without reply in the second half. They'll play Dublin in the quarter-final next weekend. Shane Roach, 34 years of age, replaced Paul Galvin and seems to have done a great job. John Mon, incredibly gracious afterwards, said Wexford fully deserving of the win. Then we had Wicklow scoring just the 5-15 against Laois in Ockram, a 6-point win there, also extraordinary. And Louth with Sam Mulroy to the fore, 5-10 on the scoreboard against Carlow, so a 15 points win, and they will play Kildare next week. So we'll get back to the Leinster counties in due course. That caught the eye for sure. Yesterday then in Castlebar, it was live on TV. Galway survived a late onslaught. Mayo 16 points, Galway 114. Billy Joe Patton with us. Hey Billy Joe.
Good evening, Joe.
Geez, Mayo adore a qualifier, don't they?
Well, I don't know, do they? But they find themselves in that situation yet again.
Is it like in the small print of the season ticket to Mayo fans? We, wink, wink, nod, nod. You're going to get bang for your buck here. Is this what's going on?
Well, there's probably an element of that, but I think it's name a county that recovers quicker from defeat. And somebody will say, well, they've had a lot of practice, but they have shown in the past that they've been able to recover from defeats and get a run together and get momentum. And they are a team that needs momentum, and they can build upon that. And yesterday they weren't able to do that. And you have to give Galway credit in the key moments of the game, the big moments. They were the better team.
They could have up to 6 weeks here, Mayo, before their next game, which is in effect time for a whole new pre-season, and they can regather and regroup and go again. And as you said, history suggests that they will. On Galway, in the celebrations at full time amongst players and certainly Pádraig Joyce and management, I think we got a glimpse of how important this game was for Galway.
Yes, I think that the qualifiers, just maybe to start on that point, will be totally different this year. There's, with the Charlton Cup, you're not maybe going to get a very favourable draw. Every game is going to be tough, and it will be hard to get a bit of a run that maybe you could get if you got a favourable draw early on. From Galway's point of view, I think they identified that they needed to win this game. It'll be important for them if they win a Connacht title. Pádraig Joyce in particular, they've lost the last couple of times to Mayo. James Horan's record against Galway is exceptional. The way that Galway have played against Mayo in the last couple of championship outings has been quite poor. They've been physically dominated. And I think that you saw Pádraig Joyce kind of go back a bit to the Kevin Walsh playbook of being defensively solid, frustrating Mayo, and then relying on your big players with real high skill level to have big moments in the game. And you saw that with the freeze from Walsh. You saw Paul Conroy being dominant in this, being important in the second half in terms of kicking some valuable scores. He's a player that's in real top form, and he showed great character because he didn't have his greatest half in the first half. And then Comer was a menace throughout wherever he was on the field. He's such a complete footballer, so physical, so powerful, great ball carrier as well. So he got exactly what he wanted, Pádraig Joyce, in that his three big players all made valuable contributions at the right time, and they defended pretty well as a group for the most part.
Yeah, so 114 Galway, they're going to have to defend well with that scoreline. 20 points you suspect is absolutely a target Mayo try and hit. In Kieran Malloy and Dylan McHugh, and you alluded to it, Walsh had two sweepers, so it was more of a Kevin Walsh style effort here to curtail Mayo as opposed to just, we'll go out and have a shootout. And those two seemed very effective. And what's more, too often in the modern game, you see sweepers just sweep and never actually make contact. And we might talk about Armagh a minute's time not making contact enough with Donegal forwards. Malloy and McHugh really picked their moments and went in and attacked ball when it was near them.
They did, and they drove up the field when they got the opportunity as well. I think Galway probably were maybe a bit overzealous in their tackling early on, or particularly in that second quarter of the game where they gave away a couple of frees, and that kind of gave Mayo a bit of momentum in that period of the game. I think from Galway's point of view, I think they'll look back at it and think that they can defend even better. I think they can definitely counter-attack better. They were really, really good for the opening 15-minute period, and the players that I just mentioned, the big names, were obviously important in that. But Kieran Malloy got forward as well. That was hugely important. McHugh, Glynn, they all got forward and participated. But I think that from Galway's point of view, I think that it's a positive victory anytime you win in a championship game. But there are loads of areas where they can improve upon. I think they can defend better. I think that Mayo had a lot of scoring chances. All right, they were really clear, and this is the most impressive thing for me about Galway's defensive game plan, is they were saying to Mayo, okay, you can have your shots from the sideline, you can have your shots out on the wings further out, but we're not going to give you very many shots in and around the D. We're going to defend that area really well. And when you look back at it and see where Mayo were taking those shots from, very few of them were in and around that scoring zone where there would be a high percentage conversion rate. And that was obviously something that Pádraig Joyce focused on, and it worked very well for them. And I think that discipline was the most impressive thing about their defensive game plan. But you're right, having those two sweepers in there gives you that option to do that, because you always have an extra man that are able to put pressure on a Mayo attacker to shepherd him, push him away from goal at all times, and that's what they did very well.
Mayo, from those, as you've explained, trickier positions, had a conversion rate of under 50%. Cillian O'Connor did not have a good day with the freeze, which is probably very understandable when you consider his injury profile over the last year. There's bound to be serious rust there. Do Mayo have the forwards is the perennial question in some respects. Where are they on that front? Because yesterday would give you serious pause for concern or cause for concern.
I think you have to look at it from the point of view that an attack is not just a six-man unit anymore. An attack is an overall game plan, and that even starts with the goalkeeper, and it's exactly what you do with all your players. When you see teams are defending with all 15 players and very often 13, 14, 15 players behind the ball, your attack has to be more than just your forwards. When I look at what Cillian O'Connor did yesterday, considering his circumstances after such a long layout, I think you have to say that's a positive. To be able to play that for that time just shows what a warrior he is. When I look at some of the things that James Carr and Ryan O'Donoghue were able to do when they got decent ball into them, I think James Carr was responsible for 3 points between a free and a couple of scores. Ryan O'Donoghue, I think maybe 4 points, and looked dangerous every time he got the ball. I don't think you can question their ability on yesterday's performance. What you can question, though, is there an overarching attack plan that's a 15-man job to put these players in scoring or more advantageous positions more often than not. And as I mentioned, when you look at where Mayo were taking the shots from, they were pushed out wide. The thing that stood out for me, particularly in the first half, is when they would play the ball into Ryan O'Donoghue or Jason Doherty, who's in the full forward line those early stages. Galway had so many men back with the double sweeper that it was going to be very difficult for that first player to get a shot away. But what let Mayo down then, there wasn't an option for a layoff quickly beside Jason Doherty so that he could move the ball maybe 7-8 yards to the left or right. Maybe that player would then have a shot. It might take that the ball needed to be moved again for another player to have a shot. And it's that sort of spacing, that sort of coordination in the attack that has let Mayo down yesterday. But when you look back at some of the league performances from not so long ago, away in Kerry, away in Tyrone, the league final, similar problems throughout. I get
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs razor with exfoliating bar.